Six decades strong, Channel Africa continues to inspire Africa and the world, proudly sharing
the African perspective.
It's a little bit before 6 o'clock Central African time. You're listening to Rise and Shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda. We have so much in store for you. Find out exactly what after the news as we say good morning to Joalani Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News, the African perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Ugandan military chief Mahuzi Kainerugaba has given fugitive opposition leader Bobi Wine 48 hours to surrender to the police. This follows a contentious presidential election in which President Yoweri Museveni was declared the landslide winner. Former pop star Wine said he fled a military raid on his house hours before Museveni was declared the winner of last week's presidential election. Kainerugaba, who is Museveni's son, is widely believed to be his preferred successor and has made a series of threats against Wine on his X account. Togo has arrested and expelled Burkina Faso's former president to his home country after officials there accused him of attempting a coup. Paul-Henri Damiba came to power in 2022 after a coup against Burkina Faso's civilian government, which had lost support over rising violence by Islamist militants. Earlier this month, Burkina Faso announced it had disrupted a plot to kill Traoré, allegedly orchestrated by Damiba, who had sought refuge in the Togolese capital Lomé. Traoré has announced several coup attempts since he took over. Flooding in Mozambique has impacted over 62,000 people and has caused widespread damage to roads, bridges, with the rain expected to continue. Volunteers have been using small fishing boats to reach survivors, with access becoming increasingly hard. President Daniel Chapo cancelled his trip to the World Economic Forum in Davos. An activist and executive director for Decide Mozambique, Walker Diaz.
It's a terrible situation. We have only 6 helicopters for now, and 2 that helicopters came from South Africa, and the others the government pays some amount to rent that helicopters, so we don't have means enough to try to save dead people at this moment. So that is the reason we have a lot of people who need that support, who are affected with the floods at this moment. So that is the reason I said right now I think we have more than 40% of the places are covered by water at this moment.
The death toll in flood-related incidents since heavy rain started in December in South Africa's Limpopo province currently stands at 18. Disaster management spokesperson Zakani Baloyi says 6 people are still missing. The incidents were reported at all 5 districts in the province. Mkatekwa Chauke reports.
The number of flood deaths is expected to increase in Limpopo. The disaster management teams are continuing with the search for 6 people who were swept away by overflowing rivers. 2 boys were swept away in Slater River outside Palawura on Sunday. A 5-year-old boy was swept away at Mbawula village outside Giyani, and 3 people remain missing after a buggy they were traveling in was overwhelmed by a river at Tringa village near Twando. The Disaster Management Center says some of the deaths were caused by lightning.
The British government has given approval for China to build a new embassy in central London, subject to some conditions. The decision had been delayed twice over national security concerns. The site near London's financial district, Sarah Champion, is one of several MPs whose constituents oppose the new embassy.
The main cables that we believe are carrying all the financial information to the city run literally a metre away from this proposed embassy. I'm very concerned that this means a considerable increase in the number of Chinese, inverted commas, diplomats, and what this is going to mean of transnational repression, something which is repeatedly raised by my constituents who left Hong Kong.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Joalani Tulo-Mwepe.
SABC News, the African perspective.
In our sports headline, FIFA is expected to decide on Nigeria's petition against DR Congo in February. Naomi Osaka progresses to the second round of the Australian Open in style. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa. From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine. Every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
It is Rise and Shine. Welcome to it on this Wednesday, the 21st of January. We are Channel Africa. From the African perspective, we'll be bringing you news and current affairs from the continent as well as around the continent and in the international front. So we'll catch you up for the next 3 hours. We are together until 9 this morning, and thank you for choosing us to wake up with. And my name is Asanda Beda. I'm with Peter Ndoro. We're coming to you live from our Johannesburg studios in South Africa. Connect with us on www.channelafrica.co.za, on the SABC Plus app via mobile phones, as well as live streaming on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. Lots coming up on the show today.
Yes,
but
indeed.
How are you feeling that it's midweek?
Happy Wednesday, Asanda. Yeah, I'm feeling like January's been a long month.
Really?
Yeah.
It feels like it's fast for me. Next week is the last week of Jan.
Yeah, I think what it is that I did the holiday thing at the end of the year, and then I've just been trying to get into the groove. And I think I'm slowly getting into it now.
Yeah, it takes time. I think we'll be okay by Feb.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we've got a lot of big stories that we're tracking. Sadly, not great news. Somalia is facing a deepening food crisis, with nearly a quarter of the population struggling to feed their families as prolonged drought, conflict and rising prices combine to push hunger to dangerous levels. We'll be unpacking that.
And then we go to South Sudan, where after the Jonglei town of Jonglei state, was a strategic town there, was captured, the country's main opposition faction called on its forces to advance on the capital, Juba. And so because of that, South Sudan's fragile peace process is seen as being under renewed strain. Of course, that a country has been facing escalating violence, and the United Nations and Western diplomats are warning that that could plunge the country backwards into full-scale conflict, this latest move. So we'll find out more about that. That's our show, and of course there's more coming up. That's just a snippet. Do stay with us. In a bit we'll be giving you our Africa Roundup. We'll explain what that is just now.
Africa, meet Abedi.
Yeah, that's me.
Abedi is a music lover through and through.
I really love African music.
He's got a taste for all kinds of tunes and spends his days listening to Channel Africa. Guess what? He didn't know.
Okay.
Channel Africa wants to help Abedi and all music lovers everywhere to discover even more incredible music. That is why Channel Africa is calling on all African musicians to submit their music. Musicians, remember to give us all your relevant information. Make your submissions at music@channelafrica.co.za. Submissions are your chance to be heard on radio. But sadly, they do not guarantee that you will be playlisted. All submissions will be carefully reviewed to see if they meet our station's requirement. Channel Africa, the African perspective. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The whole population of Africa has been shocked to the depth of its soul.
For 60 years, Channel Africa has been the voice that connects the continent, telling our stories and sharing our vision with the world. This year, we mark 6 decades of broadcast excellence.
60 years of stories, sound, and connection.
6 years of African conversations that matter.
This is 60 years of broadcast excellence.
Broadcast excellence, rooted in Africa's heartbeat and looking boldly into the future. Join Channel Africa as we celebrate 60 years of broadcasting. Still strong, still vibrant, and still giving you the African perspective.
Channel Africa.
The voice voice of the continent. Now online with all your sports fixtures, lifestyle, and more.
A very good morning to you once again. Now, every morning after the 6 o'clock news, we bring you something we call the Africa Roundup. And essentially what it is a look back in the last 24 hours, the news, events and current affairs issues that have played out in the last 24 hours. And we bring them to you in brief to keep you up to date and informed and make sure that you're set up for the news day ahead. And we do this with our team of journalists, correspondents and newsmakers making sense of those events for us. And we begin today's Africa Roundup with this story, which takes us to Uganda, where the military commander Muhoozi Kainerugaba has said that he was hoping for the death of opposition leader Bobi Wine and has given him 48 hours to hand himself over to authorities. The remarks come amid rising tensions following a disputed presidential election.
Kainerugaba, who is Museveni's son and widely believed to be his preferred successor, made threats against Wine in posts on social media, referring to him by the derisive nickname Kabobi. Kainerugaba said in reference to Wine's National Unity Platform party, "We have killed 22 NUP terrorists since last week. I'm praying the 23rd is Kabobi." Kainerugaba routinely makes inflammatory posts, including threatening to invade neighbouring Kenya in 2022. A police spokesperson said on Monday that Wine was not being sought. After a tense campaign in which security forces repeatedly opened fire at Wine's rallies, several incidents of post-election violence were reported. At least 118 NUP members were charged in court on Monday with election-related offences, court documents showed. The NUP denied party members were involved in violent activity.
To Mozambique, where aid workers say heavy rains and severe flooding have forced thousands of Mozambicans to flee their homes, with some left stranded on rooftops as rising waters inundate entire communities. Joshua Lim reports.
Some people were left stranded as surging waters swamped settlements. The International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies has been assisting with relief efforts. They say more than 620,000 people have been affected by the floods, which have caused widespread damage to homes, infrastructure, and health centers. Rachel Fowler works for the organization.
The situation continues to evolve quite rapidly. Rains are still expected to continue for the coming days, and the water dams are already at full capacity, so the situation could worsen, placing further people at risk.
Fowler added that volunteers have been using small fishing boats to reach survivors, but access to flood victims is becoming increasingly hard. Swaths of land have been submerged in water with only the tops of trees visible, with no immediate estimate of a death toll or number of injured.
Former refugees who fled Namibia during the past political unrest and are now camped outside the headquarters of the ruling SWAPO party say that they'll not leave until the United Nations provides a letter detailing plans for their repatriation, rehabilitation and resettlement. Namibia's Deputy Minister of International Relations and Trade is Janelle Matundu.
The UN system in Namibia has the honor to inform that the requested UNHCR letter dated 2006 could not be located in UNHCR's registry due to the time lapsed over 17 years. Nonetheless, the UNHCR confirmed the validity of the content of Ms. Joyce Manscole's email.
Zambia's power utilities, ZESCO, and Chinese company Trina Solar have signed a memorandum of understanding to develop a 300-megawatt solar power project with capacity to be shared across all 10 provinces in the country. The project is expected to cost around $200 million. ZESCO Managing Director Justin Luongo spoke after the signing in China.
This collaboration is, once effected, it will bring on board, as earlier stated, 300 megawatts plus 2 megawatts, 30 megawatts in each province. For us, this will help us mitigate the deficit For us, every kilowatt brought on board does contribute to us mitigating our electricity deficit.
Netflix, the online entertainment platform, has switched to an all-cash offer for Warner Brothers Discovery's studios and streaming assets, but without increasing the $82.7 billion price in a bid to shut the door on Paramount's rival efforts to snag the Hollywood giant. Ciara Lee reports.
According to a regulatory filing, the new all-cash bid at $27.75 a share has unanimous support from the HBO owners board. Both Netflix and Paramount Skydance want Warner Brothers for its leading film and television studios, extensive content library and major franchises. These include Game of Thrones, Harry Potter and DC Comics superheroes Batman and Superman. Paramount has changed its terms and engaged in an aggressive media campaign to try and convince shareholders its bid is superior. But Warner Brothers has so far rejected the David Ellison-led company. Shares of Netflix, which is slated to report quarterly earnings after the market close, were up more than 1% before the bell, though they've fallen almost 15% since announcing the merger in early December.
So that's how we wrap up today's session of the Africa Roundup. We'll do this again after the 6 a.m. news tomorrow, right here on Rise and Shine. Coming up, our colleague Peter gets into conversation with one of our regular analysts, speaking about the West African region of the continent. They'll be zooming into that area, telling you stories that you need to look out for. That's Dr. David Matsanga coming up after this.
As the sun rises on 2026, Channel Africa celebrates with you. This year, may prosperity flow like water. May unity strengthen our nations. And may every African story inspire the world.
Channel Afrique vous accompagne dans cette célébration. Que l'espoir illumine notre continent.
Que as vozes de África ecoem com orgulho.
Ustawi na ufanisi na vitiririke kama maji.
From all of us at Channel Africa, we wish you and yours a joyful, successful, and prosperous 2026.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
The whole population of Africa has been shocked to the depth of its soul.
For 60 years, Channel Africa has been the voice that connects the continent, telling our stories and sharing our vision with the world. This year, we mark 6 decades of broadcast excellence.
60 years of stories, sound, and connection.
6 years of African conversations that matter.
This is 60 years of broadcast excellence.
Rooted in Africa's heartbeat and looking boldly into the future. Join Channel Africa as we celebrate 60 years of broadcasting. Still strong, still vibrant, and still giving you the African perspective.
Channel Africa.
The voice of the continent, now online, with all your sports fixtures, lifestyle, and more.
So, let's turn to our weekly West Africa wrap feature, where our headlines include Benin's ruling alliance winning all parliamentary seats, Sierra Leone's President Bio calling for national forgiveness over the civil war, and ongoing security concerns in Nigeria after over 160 worshippers were kidnapped in Kaduna State. Well, to reflect on these stories and more, we're now joined by Dr. David Matsanga, who's a political scientist and conflict resolution specialist. A very good morning to you. Always good to talk to you.
Good morning, Peter. Good morning, Africa, and good morning, the world listening to us.
So, Dr. Matsanga, Benin's opposition has been shut out completely of the National Assembly after the recent legislative elections there. What do you think are the political implications for a parliament with actually no formal opposition just months before a presidential poll?
First of all, Peter, as we have been talking about all this for a long time, about democracy and which type of democracy that Africa wants, time has come for Africa to say what they want. Because it looks like one man, one vote does not work in Africa. and might not work, except in South Africa, Ghana, and perhaps in Senegal, which is a bit stable and shaky. Opposition in Africa, most and extension of constitution and other things are the ones that making things very complicated that makes the army to come in. So for me, I was not surprised for Benin's wash out. They just washed out the opposition parties and they got all the seats, 109. So it means there will be no opposition. We seem to be going back to the one-party state in Africa where we used to have one-party state. Does it bring unity? Maybe it might be bringing unity. We must start as scholars to think about whether unity will be achieved with the one-party state, or we might not ever achieve unity with one man, one vote, as you see elections dotted across Africa where people are fighting day in, day out.
All right. So critics within Benin, though, and beyond are arguing that the electoral law changes strongly favored the ruling alliance. How credible are those claims in your view, and what might this mean for political inclusion and legitimacy?
Those claims are correct. You remember Benin recently had a coup, an attempted coup. You and I did that thing of an attempted coup where the soldiers almost came down. They had already taken off the president because of that change of the constitution, amending the constitution. I don't know what has gone out in African leadership. Now, currently, especially in West Africa, people are changing, they are changing their leadership and their constitutions, extending them. So this means quite a lot and brings a lot of insecurity in the area where they have just witnessed an attempted military coup, which was actually, if it was not Nigeria and France to help them, there would be another general in Benin. So this means this will be a very, very fragile state for some time, with opposition completely locked out, and they will be running in the streets of Ghana and other places in West Africa.
And now moving to your favorite part of West Africa, Nigeria. In the northwest, coordinated abductions targeting churchgoers have shocked the region. What do these kidnappings signify, do you think, about the evolving security environment in Nigeria?
Nigeria, and I have said for over 10 years, that Nigeria is a country without a country, a state without a state. It means governance in some parts, in almost all parts of Nigeria, have collapsed. Governance doesn't exist. Terrorists, kidnappers, bandits, all sorts of people, ISIS, Boko Haram, Al-Qaeda, remnants, all are crowded in northwest and north of Nigeria. And the southeast, everybody going to kidnap someone. Because Nigeria has a big army, but the army has become a conduit of the same terrorists who kidnap people. The army knows where these terrorists are. I have said it, the governors, some of them work with these same terrorists. And you can see they are bringing them from the bush, from nowhere, and say they are integrating them without knowing how to integrate, without doing what we call a redemption study. For me, on Nigeria, Peter, I have said, and I've told Africans, I put it all in the world. I've told Trump, I've told everybody, I've told the British Prime Minister, oh my God, whom have I talked about Nigeria? It is a state without, a country without a state without a state. There's nothing there. Mr. Tinubu has let us down. Abduction. You cannot walk properly. You cannot eat your food properly in some parts of Nigeria. You must eat while you are looking who is going to kidnap you and ask for money. So such a state in Africa makes Africa look like a place where barbarians still roam without any stoppage.
Are the authorities, I don't know, is it just a lack of ability? I mean, they seem to jump into neighboring states when there's coups and things like that, and they move quite quickly. But at home, is there a lethargy, or what is it that they just can't deal with this abduction story?
Corruption. Corruption has destroyed the moral fabric of Nigeria. The army is corrupt. The money is used to buy some other things, to build houses, to build apartments, to bank money abroad. Nigerian army generals are very rich. Those working in the Ministry of Defense are rich. Ministers of Defense are rich. Cartels making money out of, instead of buying the equipment, they take this equipment, they buy, take the money, bank it abroad. How many Nigerians have we arrested with huge amounts of money? The world knows them. So what we need to do is, it is a matter of, the army is inefficient, the army allows, is divided, the Christians versus the Muslims are fighting. People come and kill Christians while we are walking. People come and kidnap the girls while we are walking. Seeing, watching them. So the inefficiency of the army, the corruption, the morality within the social fabric has collapsed, and therefore they are able. And another one, the capture by France, by some countries in Europe, to be used to go and quell, some military coups somewhere. Yet Nigeria itself needs that help, but puzzles everybody, Peter.
So, turning to Burkina Faso, Togo has now extradited former junta leader Paul-Henri Dambia back to Burkina Faso. What's your take on this?
This is the right step in the right direction. That extradition agreement still exists between Togo and Burkina Faso. And therefore, he will have to go back and stand trial, a fair trial in a court. You remember, he has been the one sponsoring counter coups. And you know very well Togo is itching, is going slowly. It is almost going to join AES. I have been there and I know what the Togolese government is trying to do. They want to join the AES state. I think Togo is fed up with what is going on in ECOWAS. So it has been so much friendly with the military regime of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. I think a good move that to make the relationship work. Let the man go back, because he has been a destabilizing factor for Mr. Ibrahim Traore in the government. That is a very good news for me this week.
Will he get a fair trial? I mean, these kinds of things often end up being more political.
He will start the trial, and you know that is a military government. They have only two options between you and two routes. One, you go to jail for life. Two, you just go to heaven or hell. They shoot you by firing squad if you have a mutiny. So he will be charged under the laws of Burkina Faso, which are very clear when a soldier conducts a mutiny. He faces a very big uphill task to defend himself, and he might end up either in prison or be shot on firing squad. That's what soldiers do. So I don't know what is going to be, but there is already a court martial waiting for me, for the general who has been destabilizing Burkina Faso for a long time.
And perhaps for the week ahead, what will you be looking out for? What should we be paying attention to in West Africa?
First, we should be paying attention on Nigeria. The debates that are taking place across in Atlantic Ocean across the Atlantic Ocean in America, people suggesting that perhaps time has come for Nigeria to be divided into two parts, and the Christian and the Muslim, because they cannot live together because of the killings of several Christians. The debate continues that time has come for people either to, in America decisively, to come and wipe out these pockets and cells of Boko Haram that have grown big for the last 6 to 10 years. They have grown big into a big movement in the Sahel region. Another topic that is going on is Chad, and the topics of making sure that no American can be given a visa. Chad joins the 4 countries, Mali, Niger,
right,
Burkina Faso, South Chad. No American can get a visa, and that is all. But Peter, before I go, I will not leave without talking about my own country. Just for a second, I just want to appeal that there is rule of law in our country. If you need anything, there is a constitution. When you enter elections, go back, play by the ball, go to court. I am not very pleased with my younger son, the son, we call him our son, because for us veterans, we are not pleased with his pronouncements of going to fight or calling people to come to the streets to destroy property and kill, and more deaths could come. So I appeal to him.
Dr. Matsanga, I really do have to go. Unfortunately, we have the news coming up, so I'm going to have to say goodbye, but I would love to have a chat with you about Uganda in more detail very, very soon. In the meantime, though, thanks so much. Always great talking to you. All right, that's Dr. Matsanga, political scientist and conflict resolution. Here are your news headlines with Jwalani Tulongwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Making headlines, Ugandan military chief Muhoozi Kainerugaba says he's praying for fugitive opposition leader Bobi Wine's death and has given him 48 hours to surrender to the police following a contentious presidential election. Secretary General of South Africa's African National Congress Party, Fikile Mbalula, has defended the country's role in the recent BRICS plus naval exercises, which included Iran. And finally, the British government has given approval for China to build a huge new embassy in central London, subject to some conditions. I will have details on these and other stories at 7 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's now check in with what's happening in the world of sports. We say good morning to Fikile Lingwati. He's got our update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning, Asanda. We kick off with football news. A verdict by World Football Governing Body FIFA on Nigeria's petition against DR Congo following a 2026 World Cup playoffs is expected to be announced next month. This past week, various reports suggested positive vibes on a petition by Nigeria against DR Congo. The NFF have alleged that DRC paraded several players who are not eligible for a World Cup playoffs clash in Rabat, Morocco in November. They therefore demanded that DRC be thrown out of the World Cup qualifiers as a result. DRC advanced to the Intercontinental Playoffs after they beat Nigeria 4-3 on penalties after scores stood at 1-1, even after extra time. In March in Mexico, they are scheduled to clash with the winners of the playoffs tie between Jamaica and New Caledonia. The West Ham defender Malik Diop, part of Senegal's younger generation, celebrated his first AFCON title over the weekend. Senegal claimed their second crown in 6 years after beating Morocco 1-0 in Rabat and reached a third final in 4 editions. They arrived to a hero's welcome at home, and Diop now turns his focus to his first World Cup in 6 months.
It's the work, because we have a really good generation, and we work also a lot, even our club and our national team. So I think that will be really, really important for us to continue the way we are, and I think we will gonna make like a good, really good World Cup.
And in tennis news, it's Naomi Osaka who labored into the Australian Open Round 2 with her victory, second to audacious jellyfish-inspired fashion statement she made entering center court. The Japanese superstar emerged onto Rod Laver Arena carrying a white parasol with matching wide-brimmed hat and a long veil, wearing a sleeveless turquoise dress over pleated white trousers. Now, she won the Australian Open in 2019 and 2021, and the world 28-year-old former world number one is very delighted.
I think I served pretty well, and she's an amazing player. I've never played her before, so I hope to not see her on the other side of the net. But if I do, I'm pretty sure we're going to keep playing some really good matches.
For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fide Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Right, coming up shortly, we'll be taking a look at the latest business news. But just to take you back in time, 1961, today, January the 21st, was the founding of the All-African People's Conference, and that took place in Ghana. Whilst the first conference was actually in 1958, January 2021, 1961, actually marked a period of intensified planning in Accra under Kwame Nkrumah, the president of Ghana, for the third session. And this movement was actually the critical precursor to the Organization of African Unity, the OAU, which of course would later become the African Union. And this was aimed at the time at coordinating the liberation of the remaining African colonies. And this has all happened in 1961. Kwame Nkrumah, a leading figure in the formation of the OAU, which then became the African Union. Stay with us. Coming up, the business news.
Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mukwenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African Perspective. Conversations are happening, and Channel Africa is at the heart of them. We tell the African story with clarity, pride, and purpose, reaching audiences that matter to your brand. Partner with us and connect your business with listeners across borders in multiple languages and markets. For partnership opportunities, sponsorship, or sales, email us at partnership@channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa, the African Perspective. 60 years of Channel Africa, your trusted voice, your African perspective into the future.
Okay, let's take a look at the world of business and economics and commerce, and unpacking all of that for us with an African perspective is Nosipho Zuma. Good morning to you.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. In your business news this hour, Africa's largest carrier, Ethiopian Airlines, has placed an order for 9 Boeing 787 Dreamliner jets amid growing demand for long-haul travel. Global airlines have been ramping up orders for wide-body jets as international travel demand grows and carriers seek more fuel-efficient aircraft to cope with rising operating costs and capacities constraints. Ethiopian Airlines plans to use the the 787-9 jets to expand its network beyond the 145 international destinations it serves currently. CEO Ms. Fintasel said they will continue to acquire more aircraft and adopt the latest technologies as part of the strategic vision to advance sustainable aviation. Adding it, also completed the purchase of 11 737 MAX narrow-body jets the carrier had committed to purchase during the Dubai Air Show last year. Botswana's diamond stockpile has nearly doubled its target, reaching 12 million carats as of December 2025, amid declining diamond prices and weak global demand. Consequently, the economy is expected to contract by almost 1% in 2025 after a 3% decrease the previous year. The slump in prices, influenced by lab-growth gems and tariffs on US and Indian imports, has prompted Botswana to temporarily halt production at some mines. Diamonds contribute about 1/3 to national revenue, but limited production capacity could constrain economic growth unless the non-mining sector performs robustly. Mineral revenues are projected at over $759 million for 2025-2026, significantly lower than historical average of over $1.8 billion. Uganda has experienced a 75.8% increase in gold exports in 2025 compared to the previous year, with shipments worth $5.8 billion driven by record gold prices. Gold has now overtaken coffee as the country's largest export. The rise is attributed to soaring international prices amid global geopolitical tensions. Additionally, Uganda has become a processing hub for gold imported from neighboring countries. Despite producing little gold itself, the country also inaugurated its first large-scale gold mine, a $250 million project in 2025. South Africa's Gauteng province says it is positioning itself as an investment destination and a getaway into Africa at the World Economic Forum. The province has sent a delegation to WEF 2026 in Davos, Switzerland. World leaders in government, business and civil society are in Davos for this week's annual meeting being held under the theme A Spirit of Dialogue. Team South Africa is led by the Finance Minister Nokotongwana, the Gauteng Growth Development Agency's Muzi Matema.
Manufacturing is a very, very key value proposition for us as a Gauteng City region. And by manufacturing, we're talking of all the subsectors of manufacturing, from agro-processing, food, beverages, car manufacturing. We also have very, very strong services economy. If you would understand, one of the accelerators of integration is the ability to have capital move freely across the borders and services. Our value proposition is enhanced around integration on that. Infrastructure is also a very, very critical play for the Gauteng City region.
And finally, the president of the European Commission says the bloc is preparing a package to support security in Arctic. Speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Ursula von der Leyen said the European Union will work with the United States and all partners.
When it comes to the security of the Arctic region, Europe is fully committed, and we share the objectives of the United States in this regard. For instance, our EU member, Finland, one of the newest NATO members, is selling its first icebreakers to the United States. And this shows that we have the capability right here in the ice, so to speak.
Your financial indicators: $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 417. In Botswana, it's 13.24. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 30. And in Zambia, it's 20.03. The BRICS countries: $1 in Brazil is trading at 5.38. Russia is 77 rubles 75. India, it's 90 rupees 99. China, it's 6 yuan 95. And in South Africa, $1 is trading at 16 rand 41. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $4,843 and platinum at $2,458 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $64.17 a barrel. Now, for any stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Now call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nosi Posoma.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Just a little shy of 6:45 Central African time. We go to this story now. On the second day of the annual World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, leaders called for constructive dialogue amid a complex global landscape. On the sidelines of the forum, SABC News economics reporter Gloria Sifago Musi spoke with South African Reserve Bank Governor Lesetja Kganyago about the criminal investigation involving U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell and South Africa's new inflation target.
In a democracy, there will always be a contestation about institutions. In South Africa, we are fortunate in the sense that our independence as a central bank is enshrined in the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. The issue of central bank independence had been at the center of the execution of monetary policy globally. It is an accepted norm that if you want price stability, you must have an independent central bank. But over the past few years, there had been populist rhetoric around the role of central banks and about the independence of the central bank. At the G20 finance ministers meeting in Durban earlier in 2025, there were 3 references to the importance of central bank independence in the declaration of ministers and governors. That was carried through into the Johannesburg declaration, the importance of central bank independence. So in central banks writing that letter, it was reminding the world that there is actually a global commitment to central bank independence. But for us in South Africa, it was also just to reiterate that the issue of central bank independence was one of the key constitutional principles that underpinned the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa.
So given the geo-economic confrontation that we are seeing, there is a risk there that there may be impact on inflation. Given the South Africa's currency volatility to exchange rates, how is the Reserve Bank planning to cushion South Africans against runaway inflation?
Well, at the moment, it's too early to tell. We do not have the data that tells us exactly what the impact of all this fragmentation would be on inflation. But what we have actually seen had been that you are now giving an impact on the global supply chain. And if we go back to the experience of the great inflation of 2022, we would remember that what happened was that as the economy was taking off, supply couldn't respond because of those supply constraints. We are seeing once again an adverse impact on the global supply chain, and that would affect supply. In as for how is South Africa positioned to respond to this, for us it is not just about inflation; it's also about economic activity, and our response in South Africa is 3-pronged. Firstly, is that the central bank must focus on its price stability mandate, and importantly, that we pursue the new inflation target with vigor and make sure that inflation expectations are embedded. And we are able to do that because we do have the monetary policy space. So monetary policy remains focused on dealing with inflation. Secondly, is that these global disruptions and the impact that they would have could lead to the rise in borrowing costs globally, including borrowing costs for South Africa as a country. And that calls for us to rebuild our buffers so that when that shock comes, the South Africa is actually cushioned to be able to respond to that. And you have seen that then the second component of that response is actually fiscal consolidation. And we have seen the Treasury embarking on a process of fiscal consolidation, and now it has got a 3-year track record of showing that they can do that. And the third response is structural reform. What we have seen in South Africa, those global supply chains being disrupted, we must make sure that domestically our own logistics framework is actually functioning, sorting out the ports and rail, sorting out the electricity grid. That lays the basis for the uplift in economic growth.
That was South African Reserve Bank Governor Lesetja Kganyago speaking to SABC News economics reporter Gloria Sifago Musi. The backdrop of World Economic Forum that's currently underway in Davos, Switzerland. At Channel Africa 1 is where you can connect with us on the show. We'd love to hear your comments and your questions. That handle is across our various social media platforms, so you can connect with us anywhere you'd like to.
As the sun rises on 2026, Channel Africa celebrates with you. This year, may prosperity flow like water. May unity strengthen our nations. And may every African story inspire the world.
Channel Afrique vous accompagne dans cette célébration. Que l'espoir illumine notre continent.
Que as vozes de África ecoem com orgulho.
Ustawi na ufanisi na vitiririke kama maji.
From all of us at Channel Africa, we wish you and yours a joyful, successful, and prosperous 2026.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
Channel Africa, always bringing you the African perspective. So, Human Rights Watch has called on Mozambican authorities to urgently and impartially investigate the killing of 36 artisanal gold and gemstone miners during clashes with the police on December the 29th, 2025 in Nampula province. Now, the organization says that the authorities need to hold all those responsible to account and ensure justice for victims and their families. Nhlanhla Mahlangu picks up the story for us.
Human Rights Watch says local civil society organization said that the police killed at least 38 people during clashes in the Maraka mining area in Luluti, Mokovola's district. It's reported that the victims' relatives notified them of at least 13 deaths. Police authorities have officially acknowledged 7 deaths, including 1 police officer. Sheila Nanghale, Africa researcher at Human Rights Watch, says the available evidence indicates that Mozambique police used unnecessary and excessive lethal forces, resulting in deaths and injuries to an as yet unconfirmed number of people.
Human Rights Watch received reports from local civil society organizations and community radio stations in Nampula province. And in addition to that, we visited the area to speak directly with victims' families, witnesses, and other community members. And their testimonies confirmed that the police used deadly force during the clashes with the miners, resulting in many deaths and injuries, not only for the miners, but other local residents. And this direct contact with the local residents helped us verify the facts and also understand the real impact on people's lives.
She says tensions in the Maraka mining area are part of a broader pattern of recurring disputes over mineral extraction in Mokovola's district's resettlement processes.
The violence in Maraka is part of a larger problem in Mokovola districts in Nampula. Artisanal miners and local communities have worked in these areas for years, even though the government granted mining rights to private companies. And the government has not created the rules, clear rules, fair resettlement plans, or economy alternatives for the victims or for the community. This has caused repeated conflicts and violence in that mining area. So, to prevent future clashes, the government must listen to affected communities, respect their rights, and establish a transparent and fair policies for mining activities.
The police reported that the clashes began when members of Naparama, a local militia group, and supporters of opposition party National Alliance for a Free and Autonomous Mozambique, led by Venancio Mondlane, attacked a camp of the police for the protection of natural resources and the environment. Police said the attackers wore masks and red headbands and carried bladed weapons. They said they arrested 5 suspects during operations to restore public order. Civil society organizations and witnesses dispute this account, saying that most of those killed were artisanal miners and others with no political affiliation. Nankale says Mozambican authorities need to urgently and impartially investigate the killings.
Those responsible for these killings must be held accountable, and the government should provide justice and reparation to the victims and their families. Our evidence, including testimonies collected during our field visit, showed that the police used more force than necessary, leading to deaths and injuries. Human Rights Watch urges the government to investigate these actions carefully and to prosecute those responsible. Holding the perpetrators accountable is important to restore trust between the police and the affected community.
Previous incidents in Mokovolas reflect ongoing tensions between the authorities and artisanal miners. In May 2025, about 300 miners entered a mining area in Luludi, triggering violence, arrests, and reports of deaths following the prohibition of artisanal mining in areas for which private companies had concessions. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Nhlanhla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
The African Continental Free Trade Area General Secretariat, Wamkele Mene, says the cost of infrastructure, transport and logistics as well as trade finance continues to be high. This as the continent gears itself to prosper in what's being described as the new economy. Mene was speaking at the World Economic Forum session on how can we unlock new sources of growth. This in Davos, Switzerland. The new economy is a shift from a manufacturing-based economy to a technology-driven economy. Notando Makutulela reports.
As the African continent races to prepare itself for the new economy, the African Continental Free Trade Area General Secretariat Wamkele Mene says the cost of infrastructure remains high. Mene says the African Development Bank estimates that the cost of infrastructure in Africa is about $150 annually. He says this is a compelling moment for the continent to accelerate market integration.
The cost of infrastructure is high. AFDB estimates it to be about $150 billion annually. The cost of transport and logistics continues to be high. Movement of persons is difficult outside of ECOWAS and outside of the East African community. So we've got a number of these barriers. However, in the wisdom of our heads of states, they said this is not sustainable. We are a continent of 1.4 billion people with a combined GDP of 3.4 trillion United States dollars. That is consumer spending and business spending. But if we don't accelerate integration of the market, we shall forever be a continent of potential, and we will never realize that potential.
Julius Bayo, President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, says the continent is not ready for the new economy.
With everything that is happening, I think you can only benefit if you are prepared for it before it comes. the necessary infrastructure, and also the readiness of the people in terms of the fit-for-purpose education to benefit from what is happening in the world, with serious problems with energy supply, connectivity, and other issues. The continent is not exactly prepared.
Rachel Glenister, president of the Center for Global Development, says investment in the education of young people in Africa has to be a key part of the continent's growth strategy.
Africa is going to be the continent with a lot of young people, but you do need to have the investment in education to be able to pull that off, and you need the trade barriers to be lower so that you've got big enough markets for people to come in and exploit those gains.
WEF continues to take place in Davos, Switzerland, where world leaders from government, business, civil society, and academia engage in forward-looking discussions to address global issues and set priorities this week. Nothando Makutulela, SABC News, Johannesburg.
If you've just joined us, good morning. We now go into the second hour of Rise and Shine. This is Channel Africa, broadcasting live from Johannesburg. That's where our studios are in South Africa. I'm Asanda Beta with Peter Ndoro. We'll be telling you what's coming up on this second hour of Rise and Shine in just a bit. Just a reminder that we are together until 9 this morning, and you can get in touch with us at Channel Africa 1 is our handle across the various social media platforms. Let's head to the news desk now. We get the latest from Jwalane Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Sandra. Good morning. Ugandan military chief Muhoozi Kainerugaba says he's praying for fugitive opposition leader Bobi Wine's death and has given him 48 hours to surrender to the police following a contentious presidential election. The former pop star Wine said he fled a military raid on his house hours before veteran President Yoweri Museveni was declared the landslide winner of last week's presidential election. Wine, who finished a runner-up, has alleged widespread fraud during the vote. He has released several statements since Saturday from undisclosed locations. Togo has arrested and expelled Burkina Faso's former president to his home country after officials there accused him of attempting a coup. Paul-Henri Damiba came to power in 2022 after a coup against Burkina Faso's civilian government, which had lost support over rising violence by Islamist militants. Earlier this month, Burkina Faso announced that it had disrupted a plot to kill Ibrahim Traoré, allegedly orchestrated by Damiba, who had sought refuge in the Togolese capital Lomé. Traoré had announced several coup attempts since he took power. Flooding in Mozambique has impacted over 620,000 people and has caused widespread damage to roads and bridges, with rain expected to continue. Volunteers have been using small fishing boats to reach survivors, with access becoming increasingly hard. President Daniel Chapo cancelled his trip to the World Economic Forum in Davos. An activist and director for Decide Mozambique, Walker Diaz.
It's a terrible situation. We have only 6 helicopters for now, and 2 that helicopters came from South Africa, and others the government pays some amount to rent that helicopters, so we don't have means enough to try to save dead people at this moment. So that is the reason we have a lot of people who need that support, who are affected with the floods at this moment. So that is the reason I said right now I think we have more than 40% of the places are covered by water at this moment.
Secretary-General of South Africa's African National Congress Party, Fikile Mbalula, has defended the country's role in the recent BRICS Plus naval exercises, which included Iran. Speaking to the SABC, Mbalula said the naval drills were a BRICS initiative led by China and that Iran's participation was addressed through diplomatic protocols. His comments come amid criticism from the United States and confirmation by the Defense Ministry that an inquiry is underway into whether President Cyril Ramaphosa's instructions on Iran's involvement were properly implemented. Government has, however, maintained that South Africa's conduct did not breach diplomatic or security procedures. Mbalula says the drills were not initiated by South Africa and that the country merely provided a platform for the exercise.
These drills are not South Africa. South Africa was just availing its platform, which is our seas, to allow BRICS countries to do this. Then they brought along Iran. And then it is South Africa that intervened that we don't think this. Yeah, it is a member of BRICS, but at the end of the day, at the level of security in terms of diplomatic protocols, these issues were resolved there. So our generals from the briefing that we got did nothing wrong.
The British government has given approval for China to build a huge new embassy in central London, subject to some conditions. The decision had been delayed twice over national security concerns. The site is near London's financial district. Sarah Champion is one of several MPs whose constituents oppose the new embassy.
The main cables that we believe are carrying all the financial information to the city run literally a metre away from this proposed embassy. I'm very concerned that this means a considerable increase in the number of Chinese, inverted commas, diplomats, and what this is going to mean of transnational repression, something which is repeatedly raised by my constituents who left Hong Kong.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In a sports headline, former CAF Disciplinary Committee chairperson says Senegal and Morocco should be severely punished. FIFA is expected to decide on Nigeria's petition against DR Congo in February. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Wherever the hour finds you, across the world, he's your morning African lens on the world's leading story. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
Okay, 5 minutes past 7 Central African Time. It's time for us to take a look at this particular story. Asanda?
It's the second hour of Rise and Shine, and thank you so much for staying with us. If you've just joined us now, thanks for doing that. We are live from our Johannesburg studios in South Africa. Channelafrica.co.za is where you can connect with us. You can find us on the SABC Plus app as well. And at Channel Africa 1, we are live streaming via that handle on YouTube and also Facebook Live. So in this second hour, we look at South Africa's Workers' Unions Federation, the Congress of South African Trade Unions, or COSATU. They've welcomed a new gazette, and this gazette is empowering labor inspectors to enforce pension fund payment compliance. We'll find out how that works, what things were like before, and the importance also of labor inspectors when it comes to compliance issues in the country.
We'll also be taking a look at Somalia, which is seeing sad levels of hunger. This is a country that's has faced so much conflict, security challenges, and drought. And this is playing out in a good number of the population unable to feed their families. We'll get an update on the situation in Somalia in this hour.
Across Africa, communities rise with the promise of clean water and clean sanitation. The African Union's 2026 theme calls us to action.
It's about mobilizing real commitments, securing climate-resilient water and sanitation projects, and ensuring that water becomes a driver of sustainable development and prosperity across the continent.
A landmark moment, not only for Africa, but for the global movement for access to safe water for all.
Assuring sustainable water availability for every home, every village, every nation. This is the Africa we want.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week.
So we've been talking about it, and it's seen as one of the biggest gatherings of business and political and leaders from across the world. The Swiss Alpine town of Davos is once again hosting the annual meeting of the World Economic Forum, bringing together, as I said, political, economic and cultural leaders from around the world for high-level talks. This year's gathering comes at a moment of heightened geopolitical tension and debate over the future of global cooperation, with US President Donald Trump's agenda of dominating discussions. Now, as trade disputes between major powers intensify, does this moment actually position Africa as a strategic alternative for investment? Channel Africa's economics reporter Innocent Samosa has more.
Trump arrives in Davos leading a record-sized U.S. delegation amid sharp disputes with Europe over trade and security, especially his threat to impose tariffs on several NATO allies in a bid to secure control of Greenland. The CEO of South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Alan Mokoki, says that as global tensions dominate this year's Davos agenda, the Southern Africa region must move beyond speeches and pledges and instead identify concrete economic opportunities capable of realistically attracting investment.
For South Africa and our delegations, we need to emphasize the stability of South Africa as a country, the opportunity that exists not only in South Africa but also in the region, because South Africa would like to believe we can remain the springboard of what can happen in the future. You know, in chaos, it's also possible to look for opportunities because people start to be unsure about what's going on, whether you're in Europe, whether you're in Asia, whether in the Americas. The world has become a very, very difficult and very dangerous place. And I think that we should hold the position that we continue to attract the right level of investment in our infrastructure, in our minerals industry, in our agri-industries.
He says Africa should continue to champion equitable trade and uphold multilateral cooperation.
But more importantly, to begin to make a stand when it comes to fairness in terms of trade, that trade should not necessarily be used as a weapon to achieve other political ends that is not justifiable. Continue to strengthen multilateralism and the institutions that have been put together in the last decades.
Meanwhile, business modeling specialist Dennis O'Shea says the forum has lost its credibility and is increasingly becoming a talk shop with little meaningful action.
If I should have my way with African countries and the African Union, I would encourage them not to go to the Davos World Economic Forum. The reason is because always just been talk and a whole lot of talk, and no practical action and realities with what is going on in Africa, especially the economic trajectory of Africa. So my prediction or my reality with the World Economic Forum, I just think they do a World Economic Forum without thinking that there is an economy in Africa.
But as trade disputes between major powers intensify, does this moment position Africa as a strategic alternative for investment, or does it risk being sidelined once again? O'Shea explains.
Such a question, it's nice to show or see that Africa is the option, but the question remains, do we have the infrastructure to handle the a huge demand that will come from the world. Maybe nations like South Africa, maybe nations like Egypt can do that, some of the biggest economies in Africa. But looking at nations like Nigeria, looking at nations like some parts of Kenya, within the East African region.
For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Samosa in Johannesburg, South Africa.
South Africa's Workers' Unions Federation, the Congress of South African Trade Unions, or COSATU, has welcomed a new gazette empowering labour inspectors to enforce pension fund payment compliance. The law targets employers who could deduct contributions from workers' salaries but fail to pay them. Authorities say over 15,000 employers defaulted last year, affecting 600,000 workers. The security sector, municipalities, and the automotive industry are key offenders. To discuss this, we're joined now by Matthew Parks. He's Congress of South African Trade Unions parliamentary leader. Matthew, thank you for joining us. How are you this morning?
Good morning. Thank you for having us. Compliments.
Our pleasure. Let's talk firstly about the importance of labour inspectors. In other parts of the continent, this might not even be a thing. What role do they play in compliance issues?
Well, basically, they go to all workplaces to check is the employer complying with our labour laws, whether it's overtime pay, whether it's health and safety conditions, whether it's the rights to paid leave, and to make sure they comply with it. If they don't, they issue compliance orders where the employer has to correct the situation, has to abide by labour laws. And also they make sure the workers' rights are protected at all times. So for us, it's quite a useful thing because not all workers are unionized. So only about a quarter of South African workers belong to trade unions. So we have about 3/4 who are quite vulnerable. So they've been quite useful, and they've often targeted sectors which are high risk in terms of abusing labor rights. We know certain sectors are fairly well organized and protected, but there are certain sectors which are known for abuse of workers' rights. And so we have labor inspectors who go and inspect workplaces and to really make sure that workers' rights as put out in law are felt on the ground by these workers, especially the most vulnerable.
So brief us then on the provisions in this new gazette and how different is it from previous ones?
So this is something that we had negotiated as COSATU, as organized labor at NEDLAC, our social dialogue statutory body, where government, business, labor come and discuss labor laws, labor rights, socioeconomic policy, and so forth, the economy. We have a problem with many employers not honoring their pension fund contributions to their employees. Many of them actually just take the money from the workers, claim they've paid it through, and then actually pocket the money, which is basically theft. And it's become a growing problem. We've seen the number of employers not paying pension funds double in the last 2 years. It tends to be in certain sectors like municipalities, security sector, cleaning, and so forth. The new gazette by the Minister of Labour now requires the labour inspectors when they go to workplaces to check is the employer in compliance with the maternity leave laws or overtime pay, etc. Also check are they paying the pension fund contributions. So that's a useful thing because you can't be in every single workplace. So it's useful when the inspectors go to the workplace, they also add this to the to-do list. We think that's going to help boost it. And also because we have the reports indicating which sectors are notoriously far behind in terms of these contributions, we know where to go. We know the fact that the name of the actual companies, we have the lists. Also, what's helpful is that we have normally about 2,000 labor inspectors, which is not enough for an economy of about 17 million workers. But last year, the Department of Labor hired an additional 10,000 labor inspectors, and there's a plan to hire further 10,000 this year. So that's really going to be a huge boost to making sure that we can check more workplaces and we can make sure that more workplaces comply. So I think for us, this is critical because if we don't do it, it will lead to a situation where workers, when they retire from, they have no retirement savings because the employer has stolen it. And you can imagine that if you are reaching retirement after having worked for 40 years, to find out your employer stolen the money, that could lead to a very big problem. You will be in poverty, but you can also imagine you would go to your workplace and there will be a physical confrontation as well. So I think for us, we need to get this thing sorted out before it continues.
In a case then where employers do not adhere to the regulations, does the new gazette provide for punitive measures as well, or that goes to a different jurisdiction?
It does. So the labor inspector has the right to issue compliance orders where the employer is required to, fulfill whatever obligations that were set out in that order. They're given, 30 days to correct the situation and so forth, whatever the time frame might be. If they don't do so, the Department of Labor can prosecute them, and they have prosecuted many. Most employers do immediately then comply, which is a positive thing. But also, we're encouraging the Department of Labor to do more prosecutions because we also need to send a message to employers who misbehave that there will be consequences. And we've seen over the past year, the Department of Labor has been increasingly raiding high-risk sectors and arresting people who break the law. We had an employer from China last year prosecuted for human trafficking. So this is the kind of aggressive approach which we need because right now we have good laws on paper, beautiful laws, but when it comes to vulnerable workers, feeling them often is two different worlds. And so I think for us, enforcing them and ramping up the raids is a very important way to try to improve it.
We mentioned in our introduction that the security sector, some municipalities and the automotive industries are the biggest offenders. Why is that?
I'm not. I mean, look, the cleaning sector, I understand because those are very vulnerable workers. There's a lot of casualization, short-term work there, and these workers have low education, very few are unionized. Security sector is a bit of an irony because that sector is meant to be held to a higher standard, so to speak, because they provide security to workplaces, to shopping centers, to other facilities. And it's ironic that some of the security companies themselves are breaking the law. That's quite ironic. We're not sure why. A lot of those workers, again, tend to have a low education and so forth. Many of them not organized and so on. So again, it speaks to the issue of vulnerability. Municipalities is a slightly different issue. Often there, it's simply because the municipality has been mismanaged, is running low on money, and then when they try to make ends meet, so to speak, they pickpocket the employees. They think, well, you're only going to retire in 20 years. You won't notice if we don't pay now. We'll pay it later. The problem there is that you deny that worker that interest that he was meant to have accumulated by the time they reach retirement. And also makes it very difficult for the pension funds because what often happens is that the municipality doesn't pay for a year or so, then they make one lump sum payment and they don't indicate what is going where. But it's a mixture of issues, but it is a crisis and it is going to explode unless we deal with it soon.
Right. Matthew, thank you. We'll leave it there for today. We always appreciate your insights on these labor-related matters on Channel Africa, and compliments for 2026 to you.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. That's Matthew Parks. He's Congress of South African Trade Unions parliamentary leader.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le diamant rouge et Binal Sport depuis le Cameroun, le pays des lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
So, South Sudan's fragile peace process is under renewed strain after the country's main opposition faction called on its forces to advance on the capital, Juba, following the capture of a strategic town in Jonglei State. Now, the United Nations and Western diplomats have warned that the escalating violence risks plunging the country back into full-scale conflict. Now, to help us understand what this means on the ground, we're now joined by South Sudanese civil society activist and human rights advocate Bol Deng Bol, representing the Jonglei Civil Society Network. Thank you very, very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Perhaps you can start by giving us an indication what you think the recent call by the SPLA-IO for its forces to advance on Juba actually mean on the ground for areas like yours in Jonglei?
Well, that actually means full-scale war. It means the country is going back to the conflict of 2013, what we saw in 2013, 2016, where there was an all-out violence all across the country. Because advancing to Juba, it means you have to go through other states' capital. You have to overrun capital, and this is where civilians are. Civilians are everywhere. And that, of course, means devastation of civilian settlements, their livelihoods, displacement. As we stand, we have so many displacements across the country. We have internally displaced persons, IDPs. And so this means the situation will be worsened, and lives of South Sudanese will be at stake. And this call came, as a result of the ongoing court case, against the leader of the SPLA, SPLM-IO, party or movement, and that is first Vice President Dr. Riek Machar Teng, who was stripped from his powers and now under detention by the President of the Republic, with other members of the movement or the party. And so they say this is a sham process, and we want to go and free our leader. And so this is why they call for all their forces all across the country, wherever they are, to all move towards the direction of Juba. And we have seen how they are insisting on, Pajut, remaining in Pajut. Shared, the northern and the southern part is being shared by SSPDF with the SPLA IO forces. So they are insisting there. The military is building up, on those areas, and maybe in few hours time or in few days time, we will see another confrontation, which is deadly, of course, as usual.
So where does this leave the 2018 peace agreement? I mean, is it completely unraveling, or do you think there's still space for political dialogue?
Yes, I think.
Hello, are you there? Can you hear me? All right, it looks as if
think so.
We may have lost Boldeng. Hello, Bold?
Oh, sorry.
We can hear you now.
Sorry for the... Yes. Well, I know very well and believe that it's still dialogue can happen in the situation we are in now. The SPLA-IO, the SPLM as a party or movement, and the SSPDF, they can still dialogue and go back to the 2018 peace agreement. This we have seen in the past. We have seen in 2015 when the agreement on the resolution of conflict in South Sudan, when it, immediately after formation, in few months' time, it collapsed. And then we saw the 2016 violence, taking shape. And again, they had to come back in 2018, they had to go back to the same agreement and revitalize it. And thus the name of the revitalized agreement on the resolution of conflict in South Sudan, the RX. And so I still believe they can still go back to the same RX. This is a mechanism. This is the best agreement that has ever happened in the history of the conflict, in the recent South Sudan that we have. There's no alternative for us to move out of violence and transition to democracy except through this RXs. As civil society, we have emphasized that. We have called for them to come back to the table. The international community have persistently been on the same call, asking the then peace partner now turned warring parties, to come back to the table and be peace partners again. There is a chance. Diplomacy can still work in situations like this. And so the question is there political will? Do we need, as South Sudanese, as the government, as the people, do we need to handle our issues in a non-violent way? If so, and then there is always a room. The mediators are there, including the international community. They want to facilitate that. They want to see that South Sudan is back on track. As a person individually, I know that our country, it is a hard-earned country. It is a country that South Sudanese sacrificed so much, including the region and the international community. They have sacrificed also a lot, so that South Sudan becomes South Sudan as it is now. And most of that part of sacrifice was through the barrel of a gun as South Sudanese. And so for us now having a country, we want to build it. We want to transition to democracy. We want to make it a country for all, but then we cannot do that. We cannot do the development and the transition to democracy through use of a barrel of a gun, through the same means, in which we got the country. So that's why it is very important for us to go back to dialogue and look at the civilians as we speak. The civilians are being, displaced by the conflict that is there. We have many of them, thousands of them within the country in IDP camps, instead of,
Right.
maximizing the situation of an environment that would allow them to go back to their homes. We are worsening it. And now people are moving all around Jonglei State. Others are living to Juba, others to different, directions. And panic is all around.
Bol, we're going to have to leave it there. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but thank you so much indeed for giving us a clear idea of how serious the situation is and what needs to be done to help the many people in South Sudan caught in the middle of this conflict. That was Bol Deng Bol, Civil Society Network, who has direct insight from one of the most affected areas in recent fighting in South Sudan. It's 7:30. Here are your news headlines as we say good morning once again to Alani Tulongwete.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Ugandan military chief Muhoozi Kainerugaba says he is praying for fugitive opposition leader Bobi Wine's death and has given him 48 hours to surrender to the police following a contentious presidential election. Secretary General of South Africa's African National Congress Party, Fikile Mbalula, has defended the country's role in the recent BRICS Plus naval exercises, which included Iran. And finally, the Turkish-led SDF group says it has withdrawn its forces from the Al-Hol camp in northeastern Syria, where thousands of wives and children are suspected members of the Islamic State group are held. I will have details on these and other stories at 8 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's catch you up with the world of sports now. We get our latest update from Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
First up, it's football news. The former chairperson of the Confederation of African Football's Disciplinary Committee, Raymond Heck, has called for the harshest form of punishment for Africa Cup of Nations champions Senegal and tournament host and runners-up Morocco. Heck has condemned the chaotic scenes that spoiled Sunday's final in the strongest terms. The ill-tempered match was marred by violence, a walkout, and a 15-minute delay. It took a bold and a brave decision by Senegalese forward Sadio Mane to gather his teammates from the change room to complete the match. FIFA President Gianni Infantino described the chaotic scenes as unacceptable. He said, "What was witnessed on Sunday must be strongly condemned and never be repeated in the world of football." Former CAF Disciplinary Committee Chairperson Raymond Heck went a step further.
For the rest of the world, those people who saw it, it goes back to their belief that Africa is so far behind, they can't organise anything. And up until the final, it had been fantastic. Morocco had organised a good tournament. There'd been no problems at the stadiums. Yes, there'd been one or two incidents of players, but everybody had behaved. But the behaviour of both the Moroccan team, the Senegal team, certainly the coach, CAF have to take a very, very hard stand against them. Probably the hardest they've ever done.
He says both nations should be slapped hard with heavy fines. Fines not seen in African football before.
I would expect that fine to be very, very heavy. The previous highest fine that they've ever imposed was $150,000 US. The CAF code at the moment doesn't provide for such a high fine because it deals with players and incidents where players sent off, where a player has disregarded the rules. This has brought the game into disrepute. For me, I wouldn't be surprised if the fine is in excess of $500,000 US.
A verdict by World Football Governing Body FIFA on Nigeria's petition against DR Congo following a 2026 World Cup playoffs is expected to be announced next month. This past week, various reports suggested positive vibes on a petition by Nigeria against DR Congo. The NFF have alleged that DR Congo paraded several players who are not eligible for a World Cup playoffs clash in Rabat, Morocco in November. And in tennis news, Naomi Osaka labored into the Australian Open Round 2 with a victory second to an audacious jellyfish-inspired fashion statement she made entering center court. The Japanese superstar emerged onto Rod Laver Arena carrying a parasol with matching wide-brimmed hat and a long veil, wearing a sleeveless turquoise dress over pleated white trousers. The fourth Grand Slam, that's 6-3, 3-6 and 6-4 to set up a clash with Romania's Sorana Sistia, and she is delighted.
I think I serve pretty well, and she's an amazing player. I've never played her before, so I hope to not see her on the other side of the net. But if I do, I'm pretty sure we're going to keep playing some really good matches.
For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fide Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Still to come, we go to Somalia, where a €6.5 million contribution has been made into the country from the European Union. This will go to the World Food Programme to support life-saving food assistance. Of course, Somalia is facing a deepening humanitarian crisis, millions of people struggling to access food, and also drought exacerbating the situation there. So we'll find out more about that story coming up on Rise and Shine.
Nkhanza zokhudza amuna ndi azimayi kapena kuti gender-based violence GBV zikuwononga mioyo komanso kuphwasula midzi. Zikuchitika m'manyumba, m'masukulu, malo ogwirira ntchito ndipo kwambiri mwakachetechete, koma sizikuyenera kupitirira. Mukazimva yankhulani, ngati mwakhuzidwa funani chithandizo, chifukwa kusachita chilichonse sikuthandiza. Mverani kuma wireless onse 14 a SABC kuchokera lachitatu pa 23 mwezi uno wa Julai kuti mumve zokambirana, malangizo, masewero, zionesero za maphunziro ndi mafunso okhuza nkhanza za amuna ndi azimayi ndi akatswiri, anthu opulumuka ku nkhanzazi, kukhazikitsa lamulo komanso dziko lonse lokhuzidwa ndi nkhanzazi. Zonsezi pa wireless yomwe mumayikonda ya SABC. Imbirani pa nambala 0800 428 428 kuti munene za nkhanzazi kapena kupeza chithandizo. Nkhanza zokhuza amuna ndi azimayi zimatha ndi inu. Uthenga ukufikani kuchokera ku SABC.
Channel Africa 1060. 6 decades of stories, voices, and vision.
It's time to take a look at our business news. Good morning to you, Nosipho Zuma.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. In your business news this hour, some of Ghana's farmers have not been paid in investment in the next harvest is at risk as international traders refuse to pay the upfront sums the state regulator has sought under a new model for purchasing cocoa beans. The revamped system introduced for the 2024-2025 season shifted the burden of pre-financing purchases from the Ghana Cocoa Board to international traders. Now, according to sources, following better than expected production this season, the traders' unwillingness to pay deposits of at least 60% of the value of forward contracts at the start of the season has left the world's second largest producer with a big stockpile. Africa's largest carrier, Ethiopian Airline, has placed an order of 9 Boeing 787 Dreamliner jets amid growing demand for long-haul travel. Global airlines have been ramping up orders for wide-body jets as international travel demand grows and carriers seek more fuel-efficient aircraft to cope with rising operating costs and capacity constraints. Ethiopian Airlines plans to use the 787-9 jets to expand its network beyond the 145 international destinations it serves currently. CEO Mesfin Taseo said they will continue to acquire more aircraft and adopt the latest technologies as part of the strategic vision to advance sustainable aviation. Adding it also completed the purchase of 11 737 MAX narrow-body jets the carrier had committed to purchase during the Dubai Air Show last year. Botswana's diamond stockpile has nearly doubled its target, reaching 12 million carats as of December 2025, amid declining diamond prices and weak global demand. Consequently, the economy is expected to contract by almost 1% in 2025, after a 3% decrease the previous year. The slump in prices, influenced by lab growth germs and tariffs on U.S. and Indian imports, has prompted Botswana to temporarily halt production at some mines. Diamonds contribute about 1/3 to the nation's revenues, but limited production capacity could constrain economic growth unless the non-mining sector performs robustly. Mineral revenues are projected at over $759 million for 2025-2026, significantly lower than the historical average of over $1.8 billion. Uganda has experienced a 75.8% increase in gold exports in 2025 compared to the previous year, with shipments worth $5.8 billion driven by record gold prices. Gold has now overtaken coffee as the country's largest export. The rise is attributed to soaring international prices amid global geopolitical tensions. Additionally, Uganda has become a processing hub for gold imported from neighboring countries, despite producing little gold itself. The country also inaugurated its first large-scale gold mine, a $250 million project, in 2025. And finally, the president of the European Commission says the bloc is preparing a package to support security in Arctic. Speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Ursula von der Leyen said the European Union will work with the United States and all partners.
When it comes to the security of the Arctic region, Europe is fully committed, and we share the objectives of the United States in this regard. For instance, our EU member, Finland, one of the newest NATO members, is selling its first icebreakers to the United States. And this shows that we have the capability right here in the ice, so to speak.
Your financial indicators: $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 417, and Botswana is $13.24. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shillings 30, and in Zambia it's 20 kwacha 03. the BRICS countries. $1 in Brazil is trading at 5.38. Russia is 77 rubles 75. India it's 90 rupees 99. China it's 6 yuan 95. And in South Africa, $1 is trading at 16 rand 41. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities, the gold is trading at $4,843 and platinum at $2,458 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $64.17 a barrel. Now, for any stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nosi Posuma.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Stay tuned to Channel Africa. Stream us on our new and updated website, channelafrica.co.za.
Somalia is facing a deepening humanitarian crisis, with millions of people struggling to access enough food as drought, conflict, and rising prices take their toll. The World Food Programme has welcomed a new €6.5 million contribution from the European Union to support life-saving food assistance and humanitarian air operations across the country. To help us understand what this means on the ground, we're joined now by Alison Oman, Deputy Country Director for the World Food Programme in Somalia. Alison, good morning and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having us.
It's our pleasure. So as you're working directly with communities affected by this crisis, what are families in Somalia telling you about how they're coping on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, thanks very much. I'm coming to you from Mogadishu in Somalia, but we have offices all across Somalia that are in the communities trying to find out the impact of the current drought on people's day-to-day lives. What we're hearing is that the terms of trade is really going down. That means a family's ability to sell livestock in order to buy food in the market has really gone down. We're also finding that animal health is going down, which is a huge risk because people are beginning to have to move. They're beginning to have to leave their homes. They're having to leave their livelihoods in search of water, in search of food assistance. What we know right now is 7 out of 10 Somalis are currently being displaced. And what they're saying is that they're being displaced. 7 out of 10 are saying they're displaced because of the drought. And of these group, the huge majority are looking for food and looking for support. So it's a really, really difficult situation.
And this new EU contribution comes at a critical time. The World Food Programme has welcomed it. I think we all welcome it. Practically, though, what will immediately be done in terms of what wasn't possible before because of this contribution now?
Yeah, we're hugely grateful to the European Union. They really are a long-standing, strong part of WFP, but also of Somalia. Really, this contribution is going to help us with two main areas. One is the contribution really goes into our humanitarian air service. For people that aren't really aware of Somalia, it's very, very hard to travel by road, both because of the conflict and also the distances. Many places, humanitarian workers are only able to go in because of the humanitarian air service. And ECHO has really supported us there with planes as well as support. But the other really important thing about this ECHO contribution, it comes at a very important time to enable us to be able to support cash transfers through our partners to those most vulnerable Somali people. Luckily, WFP currently has a footprint across Somalia. So with the EU contribution, we can immediately turn that into cash being given electronically that allows families to meet their need and feed their families tonight and hopefully protect their livestock so that they can continue to survive in their communities for days to come.
More than 4 million people are facing a crisis of the levels of hunger. With resources stretched over there, how difficult is it then that the choices of the World Food Programme will be in terms of who receives the help or who receives it more urgently and who doesn't?
It's a really, really fair question. It is a really dire situation. What we're seeing is a terrible drought due to multiple seasons of failed or inadequate rains. We're beginning to be very afraid that this looks a lot like what we saw in 2011 and even in 2022, when we had a perfect storm of drought and conflict that led to so many people being at risk of famine in Somalia. It's terrible choices. We use something called the IPC. It's an integrated phase classification. I don't need to get into the technical details, but what it talks about is where exactly are we finding the families that aren't able to even feed one meal a day? These we consider to be the most crisis vulnerable households. So WFP, with help through our partners, FAO and UNICEF, as well as the government, are identifying where are the communities that need support. But frankly, we don't have enough resources to cover all of the people in need. That is our miserable reality right now. As you mentioned, 4.4 million people in food insecurity, 1.85 million children malnourished right now. And WFP, for example, at the beginning of last year, we were able to reach almost 2.2 million people in January with life-saving support. That went down to 1.7 in October. It went down to 900,000 people in December. And now we're terrified that going into February, we're only going to be able to reach 200,000 vulnerable individuals that desperately need our support. This means that Somalia's largest humanitarian lifeline could grind to a halt by April. So what we're doing all of the time is we're working with the humanitarian country team, we're working with the government to identify where are the most vulnerable and how do we ensure that we're getting the reduced resources in. But I can tell you right now, it's not enough. And it's not enough to cover the people that need this support. And those 4.4 million could begin to descend to even worse food insecurity if something isn't done. And that's when people have to move, that's when they migrate, and that's also when people become desperate and we begin to see famine-like conditions.
Right, you paint a bleak picture there, especially also on child malnutrition. Those levels are worrying. What would you want the international community to hear right now, especially given that drought continues as well to exacerbate this situation?
I think what I want to say is sometimes I believe that we can begin to get a little desensitized, like, oh, there's a drought every year. I'm really trying to send a message that this is not like same old drought. Somalia is facing a true crisis. The government here in Somalia has stepped up. They are doing everything they can to release money through shock responsive social protection. That's very much thanks to the World Bank and FCDO. But what I really want to get the message out is we need to act and we need to act now. If we delay getting in resources in, cash, food to support the Somali people, we really are afraid that we will see loss of life. We will see people having to leave their homes, leave their livelihoods, looking for assistance. And I think that by April, we are really going to see a catastrophic situation. Now is the time to act. We are ready. WFP is ready to use whatever resources come in. And we are really asking everybody to dig a little deeper and ensure that we can do what is right by Somalia before we hit that catastrophe.
Alison, thank you so much for your time and painting this picture that is very important for us to note, especially for the international community as well.
Thank you so much for being Channel Africa and making sure that people hear these important stories. I really appreciate it.
It is our absolute pleasure. Alison Omane is Deputy Country Director for the World Food Programme in Somalia, speaking to us about the growing humanitarian crisis in the country and also efforts to deliver life-saving assistance to millions of people facing severe hunger there. 6.5 million euro, a contribution that's been brought forward by the European Union currently.
Conversations are happening, and Channel Africa is at the heart of them. We tell the African story with clarity, pride, and purpose, reaching audiences that matter to your brand. Partner with us and connect your business with listeners across borders in multiple languages and markets. For partnership opportunities, sponsorship, or sales, email us at partnership@channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's go to Mozambique now. The head of Aid Coordination Office, OCHA, in Mozambique, Paula Emerson, told reporters in Geneva on Tuesday that more than 500,000 people have been impacted by the floods triggered by heavy rains in the first weeks of the new year. Mozambique's Gaza province is the most affected, along with Maputo and Sofala provinces. Channel Africa's Sisi Sehalo has more on the story.
Speaking from Shai, Gaza's capital city, Paula Emerson stressed that 90% of the country's people live in adobe houses, which are buildings constructed from material made of sun-dried bricks or blocks of earth that basically melt after a few days of rains. Health facilities, roads, and critical infrastructure are also impacted.
So far, the most affected province is Gaza, where I am today, with 64% of the affected people. Nearly 5,000 kilometers of roads have been damaged across 9 provinces, including the main road linking the capital Maputo to the rest of the country, which is currently inaccessible. As a result, supply chains are severely disrupted, and authorities also report the loss of over 27,000 heads of livestock, further undermining livelihoods.
Furthermore, the government of Mozambique has declared a national emergency. It is leading the response and has established an emergency operations center in Gaza province, covering all affected provinces. At the same time, provincial coordination is assured by the Provincial Emergency Operations Center. The National Disaster Management Authority, INJD, and partners continue to relocate people to safer areas, and they are conducting search and rescue operations at this point.
Currently, there are 51 accommodation centers active nationwide, hosting more than 50,000 people, including around 38,000 in Gaza province. The situation remains fluid and dangerous. Search and rescue continue, but more support, more capacity is needed. Road access is severely impacted, including the risk of flash flooding linked to the rains, but also dam releases in Mozambique and upstream countries. Shai town, near the Limpopo River, has been inundated, prompting the evacuation from this provincial capital to higher ground. Authorities have also issued alerts for downtown Shai, including warnings of crocodile risks in flooded areas.
The UN press briefing in Geneva also gave an update on the situation in Sudan. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, warned that horrific violations committed during the capture of El Fasher in Sudan's North Darfur must under no circumstances be repeated as fighting escalates in South Kordofan. Spokesperson Ravina Shamdasani said the UN Human Rights Chief ended a 5-day visit to Sudan on Sunday, during which he witnessed the impact of violence on displaced civilians, including at a site in Northern State, sheltering around 20,000 people.
The capture of El Fasher in late October was characterized by widespread summary executions, the use of sexual violence as a weapon of war, dehumanizing treatment, and abductions for ransom. The offensive was preceded by a suffocating 18-month-long siege that prevented civilians from getting food, access to health, and other basic needs, with constant attacks on residential areas and civilian infrastructure. The High Commissioner urged all parties to the conflict, including in a meeting with an RSF delegation on Sunday, to ensure that the crimes committed during and after the takeover of El Fasher are not repeated in Kadugli, Dilinj, and the wider Kordofan region. Reports suggest that additional troops from the Rapid Support Forces and allied SPLM North are about 20 kilometers now from the besieged city of Kadugli, which is currently under the control of the Sudanese armed forces and where famine conditions have been confirmed.
For Channel Africa, I'm Sisi Sekhalo in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Also staying in Mozambique, severe flooding has forced thousands of people from their homes, with some residents rescued from rooftops as rising waters submerged entire settlements. Rescue efforts are ongoing as heavy rains continue. Bonolo Maribe has more.
Severe floods triggered by days of heavy rainfall have displaced thousands of people across parts of Mozambique. Entire communities have been submerged, forcing families to flee as rising water swept through homes and vital infrastructure. Aerial footage from the Boane district in the southern Maputo province shows vast stretches of land underwater, with only treetops visible. Some residents were left stranded on rooftops, waiting for help, as access roads disappeared beneath flood waters. He says, "The most important thing is that I'm alive. Whoever can help will help. God knows why this happened. I feel better leaving this place because I don't know what will happen during the night. Here, the risk is too high." The International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies says more than 620,000 people have been affected. Over 72,000 homes have been flooded, with severe damage reported to roads, bridges, and health facilities. Rescue teams and volunteers, such as rescue operator Rui Xavier, have been working around the clock, using speedboats and small fishing vessels to reach trapped survivors and transport them to safer ground. He says, "We have rescued many people from risk zones and brought them here. We register them, give food, and if they don't have family nearby, we take them to resettlement camps." Mozambique's President Daniel Chapo has cancelled his trip to the World Economic Forum in Davos, saying saving lives is now the country's top priority. Aid agencies warn that continued rainfall and full dams could worsen the situation in the coming days. Scientists say Mozambique's repeated exposure to extreme weather events have been intensified by climate change, leaving vulnerable communities increasingly at risk. Rescue operations remain ongoing as authorities assess the full extent of the damage. Bonolo Maribe, SBC News, Johannesburg.
You're listening to Rise and Shine right here on Channel Africa with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda. The third and final hour begins right now. But first, here's the news with Jalane Tulongwebe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Uganda's military chief Muhoozi Kainerugaba says he is praying for fugitive opposition leader Bobi Wine's death and has given him 48 hours to surrender to the police following a contentious presidential election. The former pop star Wine said he fled a military raid on his house hours before veteran President Yoweri Museveni was declared the landslide winner of last week's presidential election. Wine, who finished runner-up, has alleged widespread fraud during the vote. He has released several statements since Saturday from undisclosed locations. South Africa's provincial Gauteng government says it will help the families of the victims of the Vanderbijl Park scholar transport crash with funeral arrangements. This emerged during a media briefing led by Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi and Basic Education Minister Siviwe Gwagube in Sebokeng in the Vaal. 12 learners were killed when a scholar transport minibus collided with a heavy-duty truck on Monday. 3 others are still in hospital. The minibus driver has been arrested and will be charged with 12 counts of culpable homicide and reckless and negligent driving. Lesufi says psychosocial support will also be offered to the bereaved families.
And our assistance is categorized in 3 forms. The first one was visits. The second one is counseling, which we have requested the Department of Social Development and various institutions that have donated this kind of service to continue to provide this service. and the third one is funerals.
Still in South Africa, the Secretary-General of the African National Congress Party, Fikile Mbalula, has defended the country's role in the recent BRICS plus naval exercises, which included Iran. Speaking to the SABC, Mbalula said the naval drills were a BRICS initiative led by China and that Iran's participation was addressed through diplomatic protocols. His comments come amid criticism by the United States and confirmation by the Defense Ministry that an inquiry is underway into whether President Cyril Ramaphosa's instructions on Iran's involvement were properly implemented. Government has, however, maintained that South Africa's conduct did not breach diplomatic or security procedures. Mbalula says the drills were not initiated by South Africa and that the country merely provided a platform for the exercise.
These drills are not South Africa. South Africa was just availing its platform, which is our seas, to allow BRICS countries to do this. Then they brought along Iran. And then it is South Africa that intervened that we don't think this. Yeah, it is a member of BRICS, but at the end of the day, at the level of security in terms of diplomatic protocols, these issues were resolved there. So our generals from the briefing that we got did nothing wrong.
Flooding in Mozambique has impacted over 620,000 people and has caused widespread damage to roads and bridges, with rain expected to continue. Volunteers have been using small fishing boats to reach survivors, with access becoming increasingly hard. President Daniel Chapo cancelled his trip to the World Economic Forum in Davos. An activist and executive director for Decide Mozambique, Walker Diaz.
It's a terrible situation. We have only 6 helicopters for now, and 2 that helicopters came from South Africa, and others the government pays some amount to rent that helicopters, so we don't have means enough to try to save dead people at this moment. So that is the reason we have a lot of people who need that support. We're affected with the floods at this moment. So that is the reason I said right now I think we have more than 40% of the places are covered by water at this moment.
The Kurdish-led SDF group says it has withdrawn its forces from the Al-Hol camp in northeastern Syria, where thousands of wives and children of suspected members of the Islamic State group are held. The Syrian government army has accused the SDF of leaving it unguarded. The BBC's Sebastian Ashab has the story.
The fate of a number of prisons holding IS members or their families is uncertain as Syrian government forces continue their advance into areas long held by the SDF. Because of a large number of foreigners, many of them women, held there, Al-Hol camp has long been a deeply contentious issue. The SDF has often warned of the dire consequences if its control of the prison were to be removed. That is now the case. The Syrian army has accused the SDF of giving inmates the opportunity to escape and says it's trying to secure the area.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headline, Durban is preparing to host the world-class golf next month. And former CAF Disciplinary Committee chairperson says Senegal and Morocco should be severely punished. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Peta are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa. From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine. Every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
The third and final hour of Rise and Shine's Wednesday edition. And very good morning to you. Thanks for tuning in. And we're broadcasting, streaming live on channelafrica.co.za. And you can also catch us on your mobile app. Just look for SABC Plus, that's SABC Plus, and then look for Channel Africa and, of course, Rise and Shine. But you can also catch us on your social media platforms. Just look for Channel Africa and you'll probably find us there. I'm Peter Ndoro and I'm with Asanda Beda.
Happy Wednesday.
Yes, happy
What are the
Wednesday.
chances that Bobby Wine of Uganda would hand himself over when they want him dead?
Look, if Kizza Besigye is anything to go by, it's not a good look. And
for the military commander to outrightly just say that.
Well, he's the son of the president and he's accountable to nobody. His father is probably embarrassed by it all, but who's going to rein him in?
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, Uganda is actually where we're going to be going in this half hour to have a conversation, because a lot of civil society groups are just not happy, and that's just not in Uganda, but across the continent, concerned about this election, much as they were about the Tanzanian election recently. So, East Africa, not a good look for elections at this time.
Right, and we'll also be looking at a story where the Global Education Evidence Advisory Panel has a report that they have released, and this looks at low and middle income countries in terms of their reading or literacy rates. And they're saying that those with higher literacy rates experience stronger economic growth, reduced inequality, and improved public health outcomes. I don't think there's any surprise there. Literacy, we know, is very important to the development of our society. So we'll be unpacking that report and then also looking at what can be taken as lessons for the different countries, especially those in low and middle income brackets. And good morning. Thank you for joining us as Rise and Shine.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go.
All right, Uganda very much in focus this hour. Uganda's latest general election is drawing sharp criticism from civil society groups across Africa amid reports of violence, arrests, and a nationwide internet shutdown in the days leading up to the vote. President Yoweri Museveni has been declared the winner, extending his time in power to nearly 4 decades. But the Pan-African Solidarity Network says that the process lacked transparency and credibility and is now calling on African institutions and the international community to respond. Well, to help us understand these claims and their wider implications for democracy on the continent, we're now joined by Mwanase Ahmed, who's the coordinator of the Pan-African Solidarity Network. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and for highlighting this important conversation.
So what are your main concerns about the way this election was conducted in Uganda, and why should Africans beyond Uganda be paying attention?
Thank you. I think first is it would be hard to call it an election, because an election is defined and characterized by free, fair, and democratic processes. Now, even before January 15th, we've seen a lot of premeditated and violent suppression of the electoral process. So first, when the opposition was campaigning, it was met with military force, security interference, tear gas, live bullets, and the inability to even proceed with his campaign safely. Beyond that, there was a lot of denominations of people from the National Unity Platform's party. So after they had already been nominated and approved through the Electoral Commission took the stance of a voter and began denominating them just weeks prior to the actual election, leaving no room to replace them, which gave the ruling party, NRM, 20 positions in parliament where they were then running unopposed, which was an automatic win. There's been suppression of civil society over the past years, and the inability for them to be observers of the electoral process. The civil society organizations who worked together in the 2021 election were all shut down and barred from operating, licenses revoked, after coming together to do a electoral audit and observation. So civic and electoral work in Uganda is basically looked at as a crime. Beyond this, the voter registrar was seriously inflated, which was one of the ways that they would be able to then proceed with the ballot ticking, the pre-ticking, the ballot stuffing, and announcing results that were actually premeditated. So the voter registrar, I think, let me just reference the numbers, but it increased by more than 100%. So the Electoral Commission, which is actually the NRM's commission, it's not independent in any capacity, inflated the National Voter Registrar to 21.6 million voters to match the NRM's fabrications, with the ruling party having claimed earlier that it had a membership of around 20 million people. So in 2021, the NRM registrar was around 8 million people. So they've inflated it to show that it grew by 12 million, which is statistically impossible and also very fraudulent. And then the voter registrar had deceased people. It had certain individuals who appeared over 50 times. It had children. It had ghosts, people who didn't exist. We saw, so this was all prior to the election. And then during this electoral process, there was a huge military presence. There was a huge military presence that was deployed everywhere. Really, there was polling stations that were in military barracks. So there was an environment that created a lot of fear due to the ongoing violent backlash against the people, really discouraging civic participation. So then on election day, on selection day, as we call it, and leading up to it, a lot of the opposition's agents, observers were abducted, were disappeared, some of which still to date were arrested. Certain polling stations did not open at the time they were set to open, delaying the vote by several hours. Certain registered polling stations never opened at all. Military chased, voters away. We saw a lot of pre-ticking of ballots where some of the Electoral Commission officials were there just ticking ballots. We saw ballot stuffing. We saw independent observers chased away before the results were tallied. So it's been, we anticipated this. Museveni himself, quote, and I quote, said, he will not be removed, he cannot be removed from power by a mere piece of paper. So we understand that this win was predetermined. It's not a win. We understand that this stolen election, the stolen sovereignty of the will of the people of Uganda, was something that was already premeditated. And this type of lack of democratic exercise, which has basically become a militarized electoral coup, is something that is really dangerous to the region and the continent as we try to safeguard what is left of the democratic space, and also speak up against human rights violations, against violations to treaties and charters that are meant to govern the way elections and citizens are treated in general in our continent. So after the Tanzanian massacre, where we had approximately 10,000 people murdered amidst an internet shutdown, no observers, no media accreditation, and then a declared stolen election of a 98% vote. If we do not speak up and allow for these authoritarian leaders to get away with this type of practice and continue getting away with it, it really puts the African people in danger of the inability to speak up for their country, to organize, and to create change through the ballot. And it also jeopardizes what is left of any democratic space across the continent. It sets a very bad precedent. of what is okay, and the amount of deaths, the irregularities, and the injustices and the unlawful capture of power, and we cannot allow for that to be left unchallenged.
You mentioned militarized coup, and it's remarkable that the son of the president, the chief of the army, would say that he's praying for the death of opposition leader Bobby Wine. Is this an indication of the attitude of the security forces to any dissenting voices, and also the lack of accountability that somebody could threaten one's life in this way with no accountability?
Absolutely. We're actually used to seeing comments like this out of Muhoozi. He has, on countless occasions, he threatens people's lives. He said previously that he would cut off Bobby Wine's head. There was another opposition member that was disappeared, and he openly said he was torturing him in his basement, which was very apparent when he was presented in court weeks later and had very clear signs of torture. So even about a month or two ago, we saw the collaboration between the military, the president, and the judiciary. So there's no independent body, organization within Uganda. The judiciary is, I wouldn't even say hanging on a thread. It is completely captured by the executive. So you have people who are disappeared, and then habeas corpus filed in court, which means they have to be produced. And people have witnessed the enforced disappearance where they see state security agencies picking them up. And then the judiciary responds to the habeas corpus saying, no, we have no idea where they are. We've investigated through all of the police and military, and they said they don't know where they are. We can't do anything, throw out your file. And then a month later, you have Museveni come out and say, oh, actually, I've been detaining them in my fridge, which is a torture barracks. So there's complete impunity. This is not the first time. We saw Muhoozi saying that they've only killed 22 people, and that's disappointing, and they would expect much more. Also saying that they would continue to kill all the National Unity Party foot soldiers, as he called them. So there's complete impunity. There's a lack of accountability. And this is in country, and also from any oversight bodies, authorities, special organs. Many of our continental leaders, I put that in brackets because they are not portraying any qualities of leadership. Not only are people protecting their personal financial interests, which is why we see the AU making a statement congratulating Museveni. We see Ruto, none of this is surprising. We have seen the erosion of any sense of integrity within a lot of these different bodies, from the African Union to the South African Development Community to the East African Community. So all of these bodies are basically acting as, the yes sir, the yes boy, reinforcing the brutal, undemocratic, militarized, massacres and stolen will of the people in these processes, and giving them a rubber stamp and congratulating them. And it's simply because they want to protect their own personal interests, and they no longer represent the countries they serve or the continents, or they no longer respect the mandates that they also hold. So alongside that, there's no rule of law. Rule of law seems to have been suspended. There doesn't seem to be effective international mechanisms, because what's been happening in Uganda has been happening for a very long time. The enforced disappearances, arbitrary arrests. We have people who are still sitting in remand for 5 years since the last election, who were detained for being a part of the opposition. And they still, 5 years later, have not even been tried in court for the allegations against them. So the impunity is emboldening these military and dictatorial regimes.
When I say all I can do is just sigh with sadness, actually, because as you said, this story has played out before, right next door, and it's sad to see that it carries on with impunity and without any kind of response from those that could help the Ugandans. But thank you so much indeed for giving us insights into the situation in Uganda at this time. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So that was Mwanase Ahmed, who's the coordinator of the Pan-African Solidarity Network, giving us an update on the situation in Uganda and this election, and many people are putting that in inverted commas, that recently took place.
Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et vos 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
As the sun rises on 2026, Channel Africa celebrates with you. This year, may prosperity flow like water. May unity strengthen our nations. And may every African story inspire the world.
Channel Afrique vous accompagne dans cette célébration. Que l'espoir illumine notre continent.
Que as vozes de África ecoem com orgulho.
Ustawi na ufanisi na vitiririke kama maji.
From all of us at Channel Africa, we wish you and yours a joyful, successful, and prosperous 2026.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Channel Africa is moving with the times, and so is our WhatsApp line. We've changed our WhatsApp number, making it even easier for you to stay connected. Send us your voice notes, comments, shout outs, and song requests to our new WhatsApp number, +27 83 288 6684. That's +27 83 288 6684. Save it, share it, and stay in the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Keep Africa in your hands. Connect to our website for all your news, sports, and cultural updates. channelafrica.co.za.
The Global Education Evidence Advisory Panel, GEAP, latest endorsed report, it's titled Effective Reading Instructions in Low and Middle Income Countries, What the Evidence Shows, says countries with higher literacy rates experience stronger economic growth, reduced inequality, and improved public health outcomes. The report provides new insights and practical guidance for strengthening reading instruction in low and middle income countries, or LMICs. For more on this, one of the authors of the report, Nompumelelo Nyati Mohotlwane, Deputy Director and Research Coordination, Monitoring and Evaluation at South Africa's Department of Basic Education, joins us now on the line. Nompumelelo, good morning, and thanks for making time.
Good morning. Great to be here.
What defines the science of reading in the context of this report, and how does it differ from previous reading approaches used in low and middle income countries, or LMICs as we abbreviate?
Sure. So what we're defining as the science of reading is the use of evidence that is collected rigorously to monitor the outcome of reading. So historically, a lot of us have focused on inputs. So what we are doing to try and affect reading instruction well, but the science of reading takes it one step further and measures outcomes. Are those things that we are doing actually leading to better reading outcomes? Are learners actually reading? And that's the big shift across the world, both from the global north and from LMICs. All of us are recognizing this content and these approaches that are based on measuring outcomes.
What are the core skill areas that the report concludes are critical for foundational literacy, and why are they considered mandatory?
The main aspects that are coming up in the report are firstly that children need explicit instruction. They need a teacher who is going to guide them explicitly through what they need to master. They need teaching to be systematic, so to be follow a specific program, and the program will differ, of course, based on the country, but it needs to be systematic. And reading has these 6 areas that we all need to implement and teach well. And I think the most interesting part from the report is that these approaches are relevant regardless of the language we are speaking about. Of course, there are distinctions across languages in the continent. As you would know, we speak many diverse languages, and we want to acknowledge those unique parts, but actually the parts that are similar are much higher.
So what are the specific recommendations then from the report regarding that issue of language, as it also notes that children over the age of 13 are taught in a language that is not their mother tongue?
So the language of instruction in every country depends on the country's context. In the case of South Africa, we enjoy learning in our mother tongues. Children start school in their mother tongue in grade 1, and this happens for the majority of the South African population. So 80% of children start learning in their mother tongue, and there are current efforts to extend this beyond grade 3, which is often in the past, people would switch in grade 3 to English at the end of grade 3 and take their instruction in English from grade 4, but there are efforts to extend mother tongue beyond grade 4. So in our context, that's been enabled. I know in other contexts, the mother tongue has not been written, and sometimes that means that there aren't enough materials, etc., to be able to learn in the mother tongue. So I would say the choice of which language to learn in goes beyond what is based in terms of the science and the literature, but it's also what is possible in those contexts. But the fundamentals are that we should focus at a minimum, make a national commitment in terms of what we are going to teach and which languages we're going to teach in. We should secondly choose the most appropriate language for our context, and you can use the example I just explained now. Third is we need to deliver an explicit program, actually teach reading explicitly, focusing on phonics, word reading, vocabulary, and comprehension. And we should adapt our instruction to make sure that children are actually learning by assessing them as we teach, and not waiting for the end of the year or for international assessments to tell us the reading outcomes.
Exactly. Nompumelelo, we'll leave it there, and thanks again for your valuable insights.
You're welcome.
Nompumelelo Nyati Moholwane, or Muhuhlwane rather, is a co-author of the GEEAP endorsed literacy report, as well as Deputy Director in Research Coordination, Monitoring and Evaluation at South Africa's Department of Basic Education, giving us the latest in terms of what that GEEAP report is noting, also talking about explicit and systematic instruction being the preferred method over child-centered or natural learning approaches. We're moving forward on that one, I guess. Let's get our news headlines. It's 8:30 Central African Time. Here's Jwalani Tulo Mwebe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines. 4 people have been killed as floods swept across Tunisia. There are fears the death toll could rise. South Africa's provincial Gauteng government says it will help the families of the victims of the Vanderbijl Park Scholar Transport crash with funeral arrangements. And finally, the technical glitch will delay US President Donald Trump's highly anticipated speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. His Air Force One landed at Joint Base Andrews near Washington to change aircraft. I will have details on these and other stories at 9 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Okay, it's time for us to take a last look on sport right here on Rise and Shine. And at the sports desk this morning is Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Let's tee off with golf news this hour. Durban will host world-class golf next month with the Durban Open returning to the Sunshine Tour. The $365,000 tournament runs from the 19th to the 22nd of February at the historic Durban Country Club in partnership with the city of Durban. A strong field of South Africans and international players will compete on the revamped championship course, with the event forming part of the South African swing on the Hotel Planner Tour, the main feeder to the DP World Tour. Johnson Workwear CEO Nick Johnson called the return incredibly meaningful, highlighting Durban's proud sporting heritage and the club's rejuvenation. The tournament is the final stop on the opening swing and will be crucial for local professionals chasing promotion via the Road to Mallorca rankings. On to football news. The former chairperson of the Confederations of African Football's Disciplinary Committee, Raymond Heck, has called for the harshest form of punishment for Africa Cup of Nations champions Senegal and tournament hosts and runners-up Morocco. Heck has condemned the chaotic scenes that spoiled Sunday's final in the strongest terms. The ill-tempered match was marred by violence, a walkout, and a 15-minute delay. It took a bold and a brave decision by Senegalese forward Sadio Mane to gather his teammates from the change room to complete the match. FIFA President Gianni Infantino described the chaotic scenes as unacceptable. He said, "What was witnessed on Sunday must be strongly condemned and never be repeated in the world of football." Former CAF Disciplinary Committee Chairperson Raymond Heck went a step further.
For the rest of the world, those people who saw it, it goes back to their belief that Africa is so far behind, they can't organise anything. And up until the final, it had been fantastic. Morocco had organised a good tournament. There had been no problems at the stadiums. Yes, there had been one or two incidents of players, but everybody had behaved. But the behaviour of both the Moroccan team, the Senegal team, certainly the coach, CAF have to take a very, very hard stand against them. Probably the hardest they've ever done.
He says both nations should be slapped hard with heavy fines. Fines not seen in African football before.
I would expect that fine to be very, very heavy. The previous highest fine that they've ever imposed was $150,000 US. The CAF code at the moment doesn't provide for such a hard fine because it deals with players and incidents where players sent off, where a player has disregarded the rules. This has brought the game into disrepute. For me, I wouldn't be surprised if the fine is in excess of $500,000 US.
And in cricket news, Australia booked their place in the Super 6 with a dominant win over Japan at the ICC Under-19 Men's Cricket World Cup. Japan posted 202, built around Hugo Tani Kelly's unbeaten 79. But Australia's openers blew the chase wide open. Will Malazuki smashed a record 51-ball century, the fastest in tournament history, as he and Nitesh Samuel shared a 135-run stand. Malajugi made 102. Samuel finished unbeaten on 60, and the defending champions cruised to an 8-wicket victory. Australia next face Sri Lanka on Friday, while Japan meet Ireland on Thursday. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Coming up, we go back to Uganda, this time talking about the opposition leader there, Dr. Kizza Besigye. He's reportedly in a critical condition. We had been reporting of his health at some point throughout of last year, things being unclear and then being clear and then being unclear again. So we'll be hearing from his party in terms of what he needs for medical access. They say it's pretty urgent. So stay with us for that one.
Darubini ya Afrika na I am Henry Shakif.
Tumeona chapisho mapema hii leo ya kwamba Wizara ya Mambo ya Nje ya nchini Marekani imesema inapitia upya uhusiano wake na nchi ya Tanzania. Pengine taarifa hii imepokelewaje na wananchi wa Tanzania?
Cha kwanza tumeiona taarifa ambayo imetoka hii leo. Sisi kwetu taarifa hii haikutushangaza wala haikutushtua kwa sababu tulishaona taarifa kama hiyo imetoka kwenye ubalozi wa Marekani nchini Tanzania, ikiwa imetolewa na Bwana Tom Pigot.
Umezungumza kwa kina kabisa. Haya ni malalamiko ambayo yamekuwa yakijitokeza mara kwa mara. Unadhani sasa wana hoja ya msingi?
Unauliza maswali mazuri sana na maswali ya tafakari. Maswali ambayo hayawezi kujibiwa kwa dakika moja au kwa siku moja. Ni maswali yanayohitaji tafiti, yanayohitaji kusoma.
Darubini ya Afrika kila Jumatatu hadi Ijumaa kuanzia saa 11 kamili hadi saa 12 kamili jioni majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's now check in with the world of business. We say good morning for the final time on Rise and Shine on this Wednesday morning to Nosipo Zuma. She has our details.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. And your business news this hour. The Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU, has welcomed the Gazette that Employment and Labour Minister Nomakosazana Meth has signed. It empowers labour inspectors to enforce the payment of any contributions deducted from workers' salaries to the relevant fund within 7 days, along with the employee's contribution. The move targets employers who deduct contributions from workers' salaries but failed to pay the relevant entities. 15,000 employees defaulted last year, affecting 600,000 workers. COSATU spokesperson Zanele Sabela.
This is a problem that employers are actually deducting this money out of workers' pension salaries and actually but not paying it over. And this is actually toying with their financial future. So this is something that we have been pushing for. We fought very hard for it at NATLAC. Whenever we pick up that there's a problem at a particular workplace, we let the labor inspectors know so they can go in, because they have more powers than us, go in and inspect what's happening and actually issue a compliance order.
Some of Ghana's farmers have not been paid, and investment in the next harvest is at risk as international traders refuse to pay the upfront sums that the state regulator has sought under a new model for purchasing cocoa beans. The revamped system, introduced for the 2024-2025 season, shifted the burden of pre-financing purchases from the Ghana Cocoa Board to international traders. Now, according to sources, following better than expected production this season, the traders' unwillingness to pay deposits of at least 60% of the value of forward contracts at the start of the season has left the world's second largest producer with a big stockpile. Africa's largest carrier, Ethiopian Airlines, has placed an order for 9 Boeing 787 Dreamliners jet amid growing demand for long-haul travel. Global airlines have been ramping up orders for wide-body jets as international travel demand grows and carriers seek more fuel-efficient aircraft to cope with rising operating costs and capacity constraints. Ethiopian Airlines plans to use the 787-9 jets to expand its network beyond the 145 international destinations it serves currently. CEO Mesfen Taseo said they will continue to acquire more aircraft and adopt the latest technologies as part of the strategic vision to advance sustainable aviation. Botswana's diamond stockpile has nearly doubled its target, reaching 12 million carats as of December 2025, amid declining diamond prices and weak global demand. Consequently, the economy is expected to contract by almost 1% in 2025 after a 3% decrease the previous year. The slump in prices, influenced by lab-grown gems and tariffs on U.S. and Indian imports, has prompted Botswana to temporarily halt production at some mines. Diamonds contribute about 1/3 to the nation's revenue, but limited production capacity could constrain economic growth unless the mining sector performs robustly. West Texas Intermediate WTI crude oil prices have fallen. The fall comes as pressure from geopolitical tensions and expected build-up in U.S. crude inventories outweighed a temporary halt in output at two large fields in Kazakhstan. WTI for March fell 79 US cents or 1.31% to 59.57 a barrel. The contract rose 90 cents in the previous session. Brent crude for March has not started trading today, but in the previous session, the contract gained 98 cents to 64.92%. Your financial indicators: $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 417. In Botswana, it's 13.24. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shillings 30, and in Zambia, it's 20 kwacha 03. The BRICS countries: $1 in Brazil is trading at 5.38. Russia is 77 rubles 75. India, it's 90 rupees 99. China, it's 6 yuan 95, and in South Africa $1 is trading at 16 rand 41. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $4,843 and platinum at $2,458 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $64.17 a barrel. Now, for any stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nosipho Soma.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
So we return now to Uganda, where growing concern is being raised over the health of veteran opposition leader Dr. Kizza Besigye. His party, the People's Front for Freedom, says that they've received what it calls credible reports that Besigye was transferred from the high-security Luriza prison to a medical facility in the capital Kampala, and claims that his condition has become critical. Besigye, a former presidential candidate and longtime critic of President Yoweri Museveni's government, was detained and charged with treason last year, a move that drew strong reactions from rights groups and opposition parties across the region. Well, to help us understand what is happening and what it could mean for Uganda's political climate, we're now joined by Harold Kaija, who's the Deputy Chief of Staff for Publicity, Mobilization and Political Affairs at the People's Front for Freedom. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
I am happy to be in the program, and I want to give it to our fellow Africans from South Africa, and I want to thank you for the interest in the issues concerning Uganda and the opposition in general.
So thank you for your time. What do you know about Dr. Besigye's health at this time?
Yeah, apparently, the week in which the elections in Uganda, prisons closed off visitors from visiting their relatives who are incarcerated in prison. So now on Monday this week, Dr. Besigye's wife went to visit him. He found him very weak and could hardly walk. He negotiated with the prison officer that they should see his private fees. Dr. Besigye informed her that he had spent some days with a problem in the stomach, and he was dehydrated. The prison officer was adamant and saying that such a decision is made from what in Uganda there's a term called abavu, something means state house. So after eventually when he self-incarcerated, his wife learned from a source that he had been moved from the prison to a private facility, where his private doctor, Dr. Nandi, is. When she rushed and went to there, they went and did tests.
Hello, Mr. Kaija, are you still there? All right, it looks like we may have lost Mr. Kaija there. Very sad, disturbing developments in Uganda there. Dr. Kizza Besigye, who's, I know at one point actually went on hunger strike from prison. And with the continued incarceration, more than a year now, it was very likely that he was going to fall ill, and that seems to be the situation. Authorities are saying that his movement to the hospital was a routine checkup, that it wasn't because of a response to his deteriorating condition. But his family is very concerned, saying that he's weak and needs urgent attention. So that's Kizza Besigye, long-time critic of President Yoweri Museveni. They were friends once, and he stepped out and said, look, I'm going to have to run against you because I don't believe in your politics anymore. Ran against President Yoweri Museveni, I think 5 times. And this last time, of course, couldn't compete because he was arrested and incarcerated for treason. And he's being tried by a military court when he is actually a civilian. So we'll be following that story as well as the other Ugandan stories that we've been covering. But we hope that Dr. Kizza Besigye gets the help that he needs at this time. Okay, we're going to find out short while what's going to be on the move.
9 to 12 midday Central African Time. On the move with Palesa and Benjamin Mushatama.
Dr. Anthony Ajayi, a leading researcher at the African Population and Health Research Center in Kenya, ending mistreatment and building dignity for adolescents during childbirth. Mistreatment and what's happening with these pregnant young girls. Let's talk a little bit about how the health system responds to that.
It's currently not a major priority for the health system in general, even for the departments of health or the ministries of health on the continent. And it should be, because what is healthcare if it's not offered with dignity? Because young people can challenge this mistreatment themselves. If they are aware of their rights, they should be able to have channels to report mistreatment and seek redress. And that's really important. Neglect, abuse are unacceptable in the health facility.
Keeping you on the know and on the move. Channel Africa is moving with the times, and so is our WhatsApp line. We've changed our WhatsApp number, making it even easier for you to stay connected. Send us your voice notes, comments, shout-outs, and song requests to our new WhatsApp number, +27 83 288 6684. That's +27 83 288 6684. Save it, share it, and stay in the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Call us on +27 63 406 9126.
I can see my whole world changing.
And contribute to the conversation.
From the African perspective also comes On the Move, and that's with Palesa and Benjamin Mushatama, your hosts for that. So let's find out what's going to be coming up after Rise and Shine on their show on this Wednesday's edition, the 21st of Jan. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
Good,
yes,
thanks. How are
we're
you?
always
Doing
good.
well, thank you. You know, we all heard the really heartbreaking news of that scholar transport accident in South Africa. And, the world in, South Africa is shattered, the continent is shattered, 12 young children, died. And it really does raise concern and conversation about, child passenger safety. And we're also looking at like a lot of things. I mean, this is a scholar transport issue, but these are also things that happen in private transport, in school transport, all sorts of transports where we don't actually really focus on child safety. So we're looking at, the lifestyle issues that are shaped by, affordability, sometimes access, and habit. We also, as parents, sometimes we have bad habits in how we travel with our kids in the cars. So we're going to be looking at all those issues in terms of child transport safety in the first hour of the show. And then we're going to move on to AI tools. There has been a lot of issues with Grok recently where people are able to give it prompts on other people's images, sometimes undressing women with their images. And it's been, quite a popular thing recently. In fact, one of South Africa's influencers prompted Grok on her timeline not to let anybody else edit their videos. And you know what happened after that? Everyone started editing her videos, her pictures, and undressing her, doing all sorts of things, which is, really, really heartbreaking. And it's not cute at all.
That should be a form of abuse.
It is. I think it is.
It is abuse.
So today we're going to be looking at, the ethical boundaries that exist in AI. And
Ethics.
AI isn't ethical. Humans are ethical, but how can we merge the two? Because it is a form of abuse to undress people without their consent online.
What do they call it? Doxing or something? Is it that similar concept?
I'm not sure. But there are some AI tools that actually say, I can't do this for you. They're programmed to not do those kinds of things. But, some of them do whatever
just
you want
whatever.
to do.
Too
Man.
far.
Yeah.
I mean, you showed me a video the other day.
Yeah.
Because most of the videos I've seen, you can pick up that it's AI generated. But the one you showed me shocked me to actually see that in some instances you can't even tell that this thing is fake.
And then we wrap up speaking about modern serodiscordant relationships. Do you know what that is?
Serodiscordant.
A serodiscordant relationship is when one person is HIV positive and the other is not.
Goodness, they would come up with a term for that, wouldn't they?
Yes.
In this world of ours that wants to label everything.
It's fascinating.
Why do we need to label that, do you think, though? That kind of a relationship. It's a relationship.
I mean, it exists, but it also has some health boundaries that, is associated to it.
All right. Well, that's coming up on The Move then after Rise and Shine. Stay with Channel Africa.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
A host of issues from chronic groundwater depletion, extreme weather, deforestation and pollution has ushered in an era of global water bankruptcy. A new report released by the United Nations Universities Institute for Water, Environment and Health points to how many regions of the world are living beyond their hydrological means and that many water systems are already bankrupt. The report also finds that the world is very far from meeting Goal 6 of the Sustainable Development Goals that seeks to ensure the availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. Showen Bryce Peace reports.
The report is titled Global Water Bankruptcy, Living Beyond Our Hydrological Means in the Post-Crisis Era, with a key argument that available water resources and associated ecosystems have significantly reduced, with some impacts effectively irreversible on human timescales. Listen to the report's lead author, Kabe Madani.
Today, I'm here to tell you that for much of the world, normal is gone. This is not to kill hope, but to encourage action and an honest admission to failure today to protect and enable tomorrow. This report, published on the occasion of our 30th anniversary, declares that the world has entered the era of global water bankruptcy, calling for a fundamental shift in how the global community understands our most vital resource, water. For decades, scientists, media, and policymakers have warned about a global water crisis.
The report finds that the planet has entered the global water bankruptcy era, with many water systems damaged beyond prospects of full recovery. Nearly 3/4 of the world's population lives in countries classified as water insecure. It finds that wetlands have been liquidated on a continental scale, droughts are increasingly due to human activity, with almost 2 billion people living under drought conditions in 2022-2023, and that existing governance are no longer fit for purpose.
The word crisis suggests something temporary, a shock, an emergency, followed by recovery. What we document in this report is a different reality, though. Emerging in many places, what we see is a persistent failure state where water systems can no longer realistically return to their historical baselines. We call this condition global water bankruptcy. Let me be very clear. This declaration doesn't mean that the entire planet is already water bankrupt. Water bankruptcy is still best assessed at the basin by basin and aquifer by aquifer scale. But we now have enough bankrupt or near bankrupt systems across the world that the global risk landscape is fundamentally altered through food markets, supply chains, migration pressure, climate feedbacks, and geopolitical dependencies.
With a clear message of what the road ahead must look like, including a new global agenda for water, as Mandani explained.
Tell the truth, because we must acknowledge irreversible losses so we can stop making development promises that hydrology cannot keep. We need to protect the remaining capital. We must prioritize prevention of further damage to our remaining savings, the aquifer and the ecosystems that are still functional around the world. And we also need to decouple growth from water. We must move away from the assumption that the economic prosperity requires ever-increasing water withdrawals, a problem that has got us into this situation. We must act because water bankruptcy is a justice and security issue. The cost of the hydrological overshoot that the world is facing fall disproportionately on those who can least afford it: smallholder farmers, indigenous communities, and the urban poor.
The World Resources Institute in 2023 ranked South Africa among the 25 most water-stressed countries in the world. The institute also found that the Middle East and North Africa were the most water-stressed in the world, and that by 2050, an additional 1 billion people were expected to live with extremely high water stress amid increased demand for and scarcity of the resource. It also found that between now and 2050, the biggest change in water demand would occur in sub-Saharan Africa. And the new UN report comes with clear recommendations on the way forward within a broader project of bankruptcy management, and in doing so, ensuring that water serves as a bridge rather than a fault line within and between countries. I'm Sherman Ricepies in New York.
Right, we end the show at that point of water issues and extreme weather conditions. Hey, this climate change issue is one that we keep talking about.
Yeah,
and now it affects everything.
I have to say that I'm seeing it and feeling it a lot. I don't know that we had much of a summer. It's normally hotter for longer in this part of the world, and I didn't experience it. Only in the last couple of weeks have I felt extreme temperatures. I think I've heard mosquitoes maybe 3-4 times.
Yeah, actually there have been less mosquitoes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
and it's pretty dark in the morning when we come to work. It's normally not this. This is the darkness I see when I'm driving to work. Is what I normally see in winter, not now.
But anyway, we say goodbye because we hand over to
the On the Move team. So Asanda Peda and Peter Ndoro will check in with you tomorrow at 6.
60 years of broadcasting Africa to the world. Channel Africa, the African perspective.